There we go. We are here. Couple minutes late, but that is the cost of collaboration. If you want to see us with special guests, then you have to wait an extra few minutes. That is what it is. We are here, episode 37 of season 2 of the Hoop Talk podcast. Episode technically 3, but really episode 2 of our top 10 series. This week is the shooting guards position. If you missed last week, go check it out. We did the top 10 combined point guards. The way this works is me, John D, our special guest here, and 14 other people have sent me their top 10 shooting guards of all time. I have given 10 points for first place and 1 point for 10th place, compiled the average score, well, the total score, and that will be the top 10 combined shooting guards of all time. Before we get into anything, we do have special guests, as you can see right below me. We have friends of the show, Tyler, Hoop Venue. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And then we have first time on the Hoop Talk podcast, but very well-known face, Pirate. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Mars. Thanks for having me here. Pleasure to spend the afternoon with you, chopping it up. It'll be fun.
This should definitely be fun. Before we get into it, we do have a couple super chats, both from Teddy Hart, and then we will get into the shooting guard list. Teddy Hart said, with no research off the top of my head, I'd go 1 through 10, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwyane Wade, James Harden, Allen Iverson, Jerry West, George Gervin, Clyde Drexler, Tracy McGrady, then Klay or Ray Allen can fight for the death for 10, but then he realized he would actually have Mitch Richmond at 10. 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. Jerry West was on our point guard list last week. If you missed it, go check it out. So he will not be listed today. The rules are, the only rule I gave people was everyone's position is where they were listed at for the majority of their prime. That is the only rule. You can go back as far as you want. You could go back to the 2000s if that's what you want to go to. You could go back to 1955. You go back to 1948. That's really up to you. Did you guys want to give your criterias that you valued when you were making your list before we get into it?
Yeah, sure. For me, it's all about, and we've talked about this a bunch of times. For me, assessing a player is all about your impact on your team. But for me, with the all-time stuff, it's more about like impact in a vacuum. So I kind of like to use what it was kind of popularized by Ben from Thinking Basketball. It's like, how much impact could you have on a random team at the championship level? So if I put you on a random team relative to the era that you're in, how much championship value do you have as a player? So I value more so like ceiling raising, like the ability to elevate a high level team more so than just dragging a bad team to a playoff spot. And then I kind of have a system where I'll grade each season of a player's career and get like a score almost. So I do value peak over longevity, but I still very heavily value like the consistency of marking good season after good season, not necessarily just like, okay, you were an okay player for 20 years, more so like how many high level seasons could you pump out in a row to really like give your team a shot to win multiple championships. That's kind of where I'm at. Not necessarily looking at the championships or the accolades themselves, but assessing them as a player and trying to gauge where I think they just impact winning at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I judge players kind of a multi-tiered system. My general parameters, I'm looking at your total production. How high is your total production in segments? So I'll kind of give a score for your peak, so your best year, your prime, your best 2, 3, 4 years, varies with players, your total career, and then I'll go in kind of adjust for I do, whether you want to call it air attacks. I just say looking at the conditions of the game when you played it. So how well are you able to adapt to the time that you played, and then also to the history of basketball? How well were your skills translate to all areas? Specifically for shooting guard, I probably have the most stringent baseline prerequisites for shooting guard out of any position. Basically, I want you to be have some length and be a scoring machine. Essentially, the shooting guard's primary job is to outscore the other team's shooting guard. Is the number one job of shooting guard in my opinion.
Tony Allen hates. Don't like that.
Well,
John
no, but
D,
I mean, Tony Allen could keep you to a low total.
he
right?
holds you to 17 and he scored 6. He still fell. John D, your criteria.
One thing I looked at was portability. How well do you fit in any assortment of players around you? Longevity factored in, and value that you bring towards your team. Even if like you couldn't drag a team to a championship, I still do look at like how you were valued towards your team and how that impacted winning.
Nice. Mine isn't like there's not a particular criteria for a position. I think it's just value in a vacuum. Like these guys are listed at the 2-guard position, but it's not like I expect something different because of that. Peak, prime, longevity. I think years in total start to add up, so someone can have a better peak or prime, but once someone starts adding up a bunch of years, they can surpass them. And I guess career VORP, if you want to give a fake number for it. And then one thing I will say, the ABA stuff is weird for me. Just not much footage for me to find. Not saying it doesn't exist, I just haven't found it. So if you did play part of your career in the ABA, I didn't factor that in. That is the one thing I will say, because I try to keep things to things I've watched, and I'm going to leave out players I haven't watched, and the ABA is something I haven't watched much of. So any ABA players through all of these positions, point guard through center, they're likely going to fall further down the list than I would have wanted if I would have found the ABA footage for them. I know Pyra is steaming right now at that because he knows who that's affecting negatively.
It's just a shame how history has treated the ABA over the years.
I agree.
Considering
if the footage was
the exceptional
available,
level, and specifically, we're talking shooting guards. There's one shooting guard who came from the ABA and began to dominate the NBA immediately.
He was quite decent.
I got a question. I got a question for you, Mars, because I do value the ABA, and it's really hard because even just finding statistics from the ABA is harder, like league averages and stuff. But I do have a question for you. If you're not valuing the ABA, do you also kind of water down that stretch of NBA? Because the talent was split. So it's like that was a very much watered down era in the NBA because half of the talent was in the ABA.
I'm definitely team the 60s was better than the 70s. And I push back against the idea that it wasn't. But maybe I subconsciously tax it. I can't tell you I do consciously, but I do think, because I do like to do things relative to era, but I think it's also very relevant that the second best player in the world was probably in a different league to the NBA for a large portion of the 70s. I think that's relevant.
That's what makes it tough, because this is obviously irrelevant to the shooting guard conversation. But like if you go 100, so I do go relative to era, but I try to also account for what the era looks like, because I feel like if you go 100% relative to era, that little stretch from like 72 to 76 while the ABA was still prominent, Kareem was so far ahead of the league that like there probably wouldn't be a GOAT debate, if that makes sense. Like, because the NBA was so much like the talent was so split. So I do try to kind of have like a mental curve. But there's no, like, you can't really point to anything concrete that's like, this is how much better the NBA or the ABA was.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. It'll be something that could be interesting to get into, just how the 70s really was. But we got
because when you say the quality was poor, are you saying the quality of the NBA or the quality of American professional basketball?
Just like,
because I feel like the combination of the NBA and the ABA.
Yes, I agree. 100%. Like entertainment wise,
pool of talent.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just saying, because it was split, these players were only going up against half of the talent in America as opposed to all of the talent. So like some of the teams in each league were weaker as opposed to if they were combined, then it'd be one really, really talented league. Just from like an evaluation perspective, like trying to evaluate players relative to the competition. I do think, like, from an entertainment perspective, though, the two leagues was very, very entertaining.
Yeah, and the thing with the ABA during the 70s that I appreciate compared to most other secondary pro leagues that have come around is that I feel like there was a large enough sample of talent transfer from NBA to ABA back to NBA. You know, start in ABA, go to NBA, to where I feel like we have enough base information to see that good players in the ABA were generally, they would transfer and be
Yep.
best players in the NBA as well, and vice versa. So,
Mhm.
I mean, the ABA really was, as far as a secondary sports league, especially
Right
in the last 5 years, he was right there with the NBA.
Yep.
Without further ado, let's get into the top 10. Before we get started on that, we have to say the guys who unfortunately did not make the cut. There was 19 names given to me in total across 18 lists. So about one difference per list on average. A couple guys got 1 point, so they ultimately came tied for last. Those three players are Joe Dumars, Hal Greer, and Sam Jones. Those are the three that all got 1 point. Chilltown had Sam Jones in 10th. Real Talk, who was on last week, had Hal Greer in 10th. And Gifted had Joe Dumars in 10th. So none of us had any of those three guys. But did you guys consider any of those three guys?
I consider Joe Dumars. I've rewatching the Pistons over the past few weeks have grown really high on Joe Dumars, the off-ball play, the way he was able to get to the rim and pass out of those looks while creating looks downhill, coming off pin downs. He was a really good shooter. I think he averaged about 18 points during those years where the Pistons were winning championships, and he was a really positive defender as well. I just didn't think he was to the level of my top 10 guys. He was a really good player. I just didn't think he was to the level of my top 10.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I actually probably would have considered all three guys. I'm pretty sure when I did my top 100 series a few years ago, all three of them made my top 100 in some capacity. But no, I do think there's like kind of a tier jump. Like I'm pretty sure all of my 10 shooting guards were all like top 55 to top 60 players. So I did like somewhat consider these guys, but I do feel like there's a little bit of a tier jump to the next 10.
Yeah, honestly, those three names I'd say are pretty easily outside of my top 15. So honestly, I didn't really consider any of those names for the top 10. No.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't consider them when I got the list. I was pleasantly surprised to see them get some love. If I were to consider any of them, I think Sam Jones would have been the closest to making it. Just because I think he was a really good defender and he was an elite shooter for the time. Pretty much an automatic bank shot, which seemed to never miss anytime I'm watching him. So I think Sam Jones is probably the closest. And then you look at him, he left right as Bill Russell left. So if you wanted to really say, you could be like, Boston fell off when Sam Jones left. So I think Sam Jones was the closest I came to anyone making the list. I think there was a couple years where you could argue he was a top 7-8 player in the league. That was obviously that top 5, but in that next group he was probably one of the best players in the league after that. So I think that alongside the elite jump shooting, the defensive stuff, Sam Jones was the closest. Hal Greer wasn't someone I ultimately considered, or do think he was one of the better scorers of the 60s. I just don't think that he was really to the level of the guys I had in my top 10. And Joe Dumars, although I like him and I know John D has been very high on him recently, quite frankly, I just don't think he was as good as the guys I have. But once again, really good players. No one who's been named or is going to be named is a bad player. So shout out to those guys. They did ultimately come last with 1 point between them, well, 1 point each. But they still got some love. So shout out to those three. Next up, so we've got with 2 points. Only one person still had them, but they had them in 9th. And Teddy Hart alluded to him earlier. Mitch Richmond. Mitch Richmond had 1 9th place vote. Shout out to my guy Ox. He's told me that my Mitch Richmond would have won 6 rings if he was on the Bulls instead of Michael Jordan. So I'm not surprised to see him have Mitch Richmond here. But for you guys, was Mitch Richmond someone you considered?
Yeah, he closer than the last 3 names. I got Mitch probably in that 13, 14 range. He was a tremendous player. You know, I'm in Oakland born, so I'm a Warriors fan. So I don't know if I want to let, hopefully no bias involved, but he was just, as far as offensively, a great player. He could score pretty much anywhere on the court. He was a really great shooter. Defense a little lacking. His physique a little on the heavier side, so not quite the greatest defender, but offensively, great player, athletic player, strong player, could do most anything offensively.
didn't really consider him, but I agree with everything Pirate just said. Like, just tremendously talented scorer, could play it on or off the ball, easy to fit in like a championship caliber team if you ever got that opportunity. But to me, it's like, if you're going to be a limited defender, I'm going to need a little bit more from you as a playmaker, to kind of make up that ground and be like a real offensive juggernaut. And to me, it's like he was more of a not a specialist, of course, because he's averaging 26, 25 points per game, but more so like just a really high level scorer who didn't really add enough value on the margins for me.
You guys factor in that he wasn't in the playoffs a whole lot? Was that something that held him back?
I mean, I liked, I think basketball is a team sport. I don't draw a huge connection between team success and individual talent, unless there's something glaring where it's like, all right, this is obviously the reason why the team can't go forward.
Those Kings teams were pretty brutal.
That happens all the time, man. There are 30 teams in the league. A lot of great players are just going to end up on teams that aren't very good, and I hate penalizing someone. Yeah, anyone who's played sports knows that it sucks to be penalized because your team isn't very good.
I agree. I'm glad we're all on the same page in that regard. Mitch Richmond, once again, not someone I considered, but I knew Ox was going to have him somewhere in and around the list, so I expected us to talk about him. Really talented scorer, really good outside shooter from mid. Most of these guys were mid-range guys, but even him, when the three-point line got shortened, he got them threes up. So he did have some extra value there as a floor spacer. Just really like both of you guys said, really talented scorer. Wasn't much in terms of a passer, but once again, at the time, you weren't asked to do that as much. So I think he remedied that with some of the off-ball stuff, just the ability to play with other guys, some primary playmakers. So I think really, really talented offensive player. The defense ultimately did hold him back a little bit, but definitely someone who I think had an outside case at the top 10, but ultimately just wasn't enough for me to make it. Anything you wanted to say, John D, or can we move on to the next player?
Oh, y'all go ahead.
The next player, Pirate, you can start with this because it's someone who you had on your list. You had him at 8. It was you were the only person who had them. So they had 3 total points.
At 8? Oh, nobody else.
No one else had him. It is the defensive player of the year, Sidney Moncrief.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Sidney Moncrief.
Yeah, I am surprised. I thought you probably wouldn't make the total list, but I'm kind of surprised I'm the only person who had him at all. I mean, Sidney Moncrief, not the longest career. But again, just as far as two-way player, which I think primary goal of shooting guard, score more points than the other shooting guard on higher efficiency. And Sidney Moncrief was a tremendous defender, probably on par with, you got MJ, Kobe, and Moncrief are the best defenders on this list, I believe. In his prime.
Tony Allen might have some votes. You don't know.
Tony Allen made the list now. Yeah, Sidney Moncrief was a great two-way player, offense and defense. On defense, he was able to square up against the guy. He was a great help defender. Blocks, he could really get up, block the ball, steal the ball. He was able to lead offenses, pretty good performances in the playoffs. He swept Bird and the Celtics in '83. That was, right when the Celtics, they won the ring the next year. He bounced MJ from the playoffs, first guy to do that. He averaged like 27, great efficiency, scorer.
MJ outscored him in that series, just for his way.
He did, but I think MJ only shot like 40% for the series.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, shot chucking. I hate shot chucking. I think efficient scoring is extremely valuable, and Sidney Moncrief was great on both ends of the floor. Efficient, not the longest career, but again, when I air attacks like the 80s, 70s, 60s, I generally expect those players to have not as long of a career. Players back then, you went to college for 4 years. Most players didn't even get into the league till they were 22, 23. They were wearing shitty, Converse, no support. Most guys, if you could put together 10 solid years, it's about all you expect out of a professional career back then. So, yeah. Moncrief.
I agree. The longevity, there's no exact science. I can't tell you 7 years in 1980 is the equivalent of 12 years today. But I do value longevity different from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s compared to today. So like 15 years, for example, back then is not the same as 15 years now. But Sidney Moncrief, even with that context, the longevity was lackluster for me. We're looking at 5-6 seasons where he was one of the better players in the league. But before and after that, we're looking at someone who was good defensively, but the offense started to regress. He started becoming less involved on that side of the ball. I think injuries started catching up. You start adding all of that up. It's like, okay, these 5 years, 6 years outweighing some of the other guys I have. It wasn't enough for me, although I do think he is one of the best guard defenders in the history of the game. And then offensively, he wasn't going to shoot threes, but who cares? Really good mover, and he could really pass the ball. And that was the thing about those Bucks teams. You go back and watch; they had multiple guys who could pass the ball. It was, I guess, a staple of their team with Marquise Johnson, Paul Pressey, Sidney Moncrief, etc. And he was another one of those guys who could just make good decisions, whether that's with his own scoring gravity as a driver or just extra passes, moving the ball, and then he could score. So Sidney Moncrief was someone I was high on, especially prime Sidney Moncrief, but the longevity just left him off the list for me. So definitely considered him though. Just couldn't make the cut.
I think you hit the nail. I think you both hit the nail on the head. I'm so glad somebody brought up Moncrief because that was probably one of my first 1 or 2 guys off, like 12 or 13th on my list. In my opinion, the best defensive guard in NBA history. I think the way he was able to just wreak havoc by chasing guys around screens, the length, the hands, the ability to get up at the rim. Like there wasn't anything he couldn't do defensively as a smaller guard. And I think that just was kind of the floor for those Bucks teams. Like those Bucks teams were way better than people remember. And I think he was pretty clearly the best player on that team. Like obviously they had good talent, but he was very clearly the head honcho to me. And they were really, really good teams that were giving the Bulls, the Celtics, like he mentioned, trouble in the playoffs. To me, it's the same thing. Like this is a guy who gets to the free throw line a lot, has a little bit of a mid-range game, can get to the rim, good passer, like quality offensive player, a really, really good two-way value. Honestly, like worthy of some MVP votes in some of those years. The problem was for me, the same thing. You get like 5 years of him as an all-star caliber player. So when you start talking about other guys who are giving you 9, 10 all-star quality years, it's just like a career gap. But peak for peak, like I feel like he'd probably make my top 10 as well.
Yeah, he was a really good defender, and he played really well inside the arc. I think like maybe his first few seasons, he was like upwards of 50% inside the arc. Again, it was the longevity. But as a defensive guard, I do think he's up there with like the Walt Frazier's, the Tony Allens, things of that nature. He was very impactful on the defensive side.
I'm happy you had him, Pirate, because I did want to talk about Sidney Moncrief. And if anyone was going to have him, I was expecting it to be you or Chill. Chill kind of let me down. But I am happy you had him. Yeah, I am happy.
There are a lot of great shooting guards. The end of the list is tough.
Definitely. I mean, that's why we had 3 extra names this week than we did last week. If anyone just joined, we are getting through the guys who didn't quite make the cut. At joint 19th, we had Sam Jones, Hal Greer, and Joe Dumars. At 16th, we had Mitch Richmond. And at 15th, we have Sidney Moncrief. We are now at 14th. And Pirate, once again, this is someone you had on your list. You had this guy at 9. 2 other people joined you. Riv also had him at 9, and Jordan, who is not here, had him at 10. That is Pete Maravich. You had him at 9. Talk to me about Pete Maravich, Pirate.
So yeah, I feel like Pete Maravich is one of the outstanding players in the history of the NBA who was great in his time, but he would have been perfectly built for for basketball today and later versions of basketball with the 3-point shot. Pete Maravich was an insanely gifted shooter. If you look, so if anyone wants to knock Pete Maravich's shooting percentage, he shot around 44-45%, but he shot further away than anybody in a league that didn't have a 3-point line. If you go back and watch like in 77, his game against the Knicks, where he scores 68 points, 11 of his made shots come from where there would have been a 3-point line. So just the brazen shooting combined with ball handling, how insanely ahead of his time. He was, again, not the longest career. Also interrupted. He started his career with Atlanta with Lou Hudson, which probably would have rounded into a pretty good team in the 70s. But in 75, the New Orleans Jazz became an expansion team. They get the local boy from Louisiana, Pete Maravich, to go to just a god-awful Jazz team that he finishes up his career with. He played with absolutely no one. So, I mean, to be able to put up the volume on 45% when there's no 3-point line, you have no teammates, and you're jacking it up from like 23 feet, getting 2 points per shot. I think Pistol Pete was, one of the best ever.
I think Pete Maravich is like one of the bad guys of his era. Like just being able to have different counters around the rim, be able to finish from different areas, being able to pull up from where he used to pull up from, the ball handling, the playmaking. It's really fun to watch. It is really fun to watch. So I definitely understand the Pete Maravich love. I just haven't watched him as much for me to like properly analyze him and put him in my top 10. So maybe that's on me.
Yeah, Maravich for me is one of the guys that I'm probably lower on historically. And I think actually Pirate made a really good point about the outside shooting. Like, I genuinely think his career would be viewed more favorably by most people, and me included, if he played with a 3-point line. But the fact that he was, like, from a talent perspective, it's so good that he was able to shoot like that. Like, it's just insane to look back and see what he was capable of doing. But because there wasn't a 3-point line, that shot he's taking is still worth the same amount of points as a layup or 2 free throws. And I do think Maravich lacked in some regard in the ability to just create easy shots for himself. And you could point to the team as an issue, like lack of space and lack of offensive talent next to him. But this is a guy who's taking like 25, 26, 27 shots a game, and only a few of them are in the paint. And so in an era where you need 2-point scoring is king, is everything. I do think just the fact that he couldn't be hyper efficient as a volume scorer was one of the things that kind of held him back. I do like the playmaking talent, like the creativity. Like, dude, it is crazy. Like, Maravich is one of those guys that's like, you do really wonder what he could have done if you just plugged him into a different era, because the way he could handle the ball, the creativity as a passer, the outside shooting, it's just crazy how far ahead of his time he was. But I do think, like, going with my criteria of impact relative to the era you're in, he is a guy who like was a very weak defender, not the most efficient scorer. And so I just think, and then of course, on top of the lack of longevity compared to some of these other guys, just not someone I really considered, but I do. I actually have a Pistol Pete jersey. That's the first jersey I ever got. I love the guy. Just not super high on his impact as a player.
Yeah, the Pete Maravich thing, I think Pete Maravich, I say all the time, I'm relative to era. That's what I do. He's one of the players where relative to era, I think, does hurt his case. I think him playing way ahead of his time, he didn't get the benefits of the relaxed dribbling rules, so where he could have been even more creative. The 3-point line, all of those things he didn't benefit from. I do think he was probably the best shooter in the league at the time. I do think that's probably a fair thing to say. Really aggressive scorer, really good on the ball, amazing handle, really creative passer. Now, the turnovers were through the roof. It wasn't tracked until like 1977 or something. But even before then, you watch games. He's turning the ball over like crazy. That is just a cost of being as creative as he was. But really good scorer, really talented passer. The defense did leave a bit to be desired. My one question, and I'm deferring here because I haven't watched much of Pete Maravich in 1980. Why did he only shoot 0.6 threes a game? Once the 3-point line.
Well, exactly. I was going to say, now he wasn't totally absent of the 3-point line. They brought in for his last year in the league, and Pete Maravich is a 67% 3-point shooter. I mean, just to be clear.
But why did he barely shoot them?
Well, Mars, because the league was just, people have to understand, these things comes in waves. It's not like you just make a 3-point line. You still have to have teams building offenses around 3-point shots. You still have to have players going into practice day after day, practicing those plays to maximize 3-point shots. None of that was there in 1980. In 1980, it was still seen as kind of like a gimmick. A coach is going to get on you unless there's like 1 second on the shot clock and you put up a 3. Like coaches back then wanted you to run the offenses that they had in place, and there just wasn't any place for the kind of 3-point shooting that we see today, which, like I said, it's a process. It's you have to build the rules, but then you have to have the coaches adapt to the rules, and then you have to have the players adapt their skill set and their practice training to the rules, and all of that takes time.
That's a good point, especially because he got onto a Boston team that was like already looking to compete. So it wasn't he
was shot.
Right. He didn't have like a green light to do what he was doing in New Orleans.
There's a story from that 1980 season on the Celtics, right? It was like late in the game, like a minute left. Pete's got the ball, and he passes it to Bird on the wing. Pete's man goes and defends Bird, so Bird's got 2 guys right in his face. And the shot clock runs down. Bird puts up a terrible shot, and Pete goes up and says, "Hey man, like I was wide open. You got to pass me the ball." He's like, "Well, I wouldn't have 2 guys on me if you weren't so shit."
Oh, wow. Average Larry Bird moment.
That was average Larry Bird, yeah.
Real quick before we move on from 1980, I just pulled up like the 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, and I just want to say shout out to Rick Barry for just being a volume 3-point shooter. The first year the 3-point line was in place.
Rick Barry was the other shooter out of the 70s. It was
4.5 3-point attempts per 75 in 1980 is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Might hear about Rick Barry next week, hopefully. Anyway,
sure
but yeah, Pete Maravich ultimately ended up coming in 14th place with 5 total points. Shout out to Pirate, Riv, and Jordan for their votes. Next up, we have 2 people tied, so they are, I guess, joint 12th with 7 points. The people who had them are ZZ, who was on last week, Penn, and Swiper for this one player. And then for the other player, it was ZZ again. So ZZ has both of them. Ox, Ron, and Riv. So do you guys have any guesses at who this could be? They both have 7 points.
Klay Thompson.
I feel like one of them's got to be Klay. There's one guy I'm kind of waiting because I feel like he might be in the top 10, so I don't want to throw out a guess. But I think Klay, does Vince Carter count as a 2 or a 3?
Vince is a 2.
So
yeah,
Vince
I would say
the other
Vince.
guy, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are right. It is Klay and Vince. They both had 7 points. ZZ had Klay Thompson in 7th. Ox, Ron, and Riv all had him in 10th. So he ended up with 7 total points. And then for Vince Carter, Penn had Vince in 7th. Swiper had him in 9th, and ZZ had him in 10th. So that is how they acquired their 7 points. So let's start with Vince Carter. Did you guys consider Vince Carter and what left him off your list?
Yeah, I considered him heavily. Vince is a guy I'm really high on. Specifically, 01 Vince, I think, is one of the most criminally underrated seasons ever. People remember Vince as like this dunker. And of course, probably the greatest dunker ever. Definitely in the discussion. But like also a really, really good jump shooter that kind of flew under the radar. Like this is a guy who could give you 40% from 3 and 45% on long 2s in an era where you weren't getting much space to operate. So Vince being able to do what he did as a scorer for those Raptors teams, like the 01 playoffs especially, just a monster. Okay defensively, I think kind of limited for how many tools he had. He probably should have been a better defender. I do think like decent off-ball player, decent passer. My only problem with Vince is that like he's one of those guys that I was kind of thinking of when I hinted at like gimmicky longevity. Like he's stuck around for a very long time. And I do think that's valuable, but like the last 11 years of his career, he was like just a positive play, like not even, maybe arguably not even a positive player for most of them. I do think like if I'm grading his seasons on like a scale of sub all-star being where I start to value, like you're considered for the all-star team, it probably stops in like 2012 or 2013. And then you just get all these extra years. I think Vince peaked in like his 3rd or 4th season and then was never really quite the same level from there. That's kind of my thing with Vince. I do think peak for peak, this is the best guy we've talked about so far. That 01 season was just ridiculously good, but I don't think he really had high level season after high level season like some of these other guys.
I think his first step was like really good, like the triple threat sweep through and then just driving straight past someone. I think you mentioned it with the jump shooting as a 3-point shooter, as a mid-range shooter. He was really good in transition, and he was really crafty around the rim. Outside of just dunks, I thought he had a pretty good layup package as well. Extremely athletic. I just didn't consider him as good as a scorer as my number 10 or my number 9 to really have him make this list for me. I think it was like a pretty clear gap.
And also, sorry, I don't want to like ramble, but one of my problems with Vince, actually, that you kind of touched on a little bit, was like he was a freak athlete, but he didn't like get to the rim as much as you would like from someone who was that athletic. Like he still was a guy who was jump shot first. And you only see the highlights, right? Like the high flying stuff. But if you go back and like watch the 01 playoffs, it's a lot of jump shot after jump shot. But I do think Vince is still just a ridiculously good scorer.
Yeah, I had both those guys right outside top 10, and I could easily understand having them in the top 10. Considering like a couple of the older guys I did put in the top 10, I could perfectly understand an argument for having Klay or Vince. Like Bro said, his longevity I don't factor too much. Basically, the last 10 years of the career not worth much at all in an argument like this. So the question is that first 10 years good enough to make it in the top 10? And I would say damn near, right on the cusp. If he's not at the end of the top 10, he's right outside. Not the greatest defender, not the most efficient scorer, but still not a lot of holes in his game. That the first 10 years.
Yeah.
Vince would have probably been my 12. Yeah, probably would have been my 12. Really high on the peak, like you guys have all said. The longevity, not as high on. I think you start seeing major regression by the time he's in New Jersey. I do like his fit with Jason Kidd. I do think that did give him a few extra years. And then once you get to Orlando, I'm kind of already done with the all-star caliber stuff. But really high on it. I think really gifted shooter, just really talented. One thing, I guess, slight pushback I had to what John D said. He had an array of finishes at the rim, but his touch wasn't the greatest. Like, he did struggle finishing over some of the bigs at the time. If it wasn't obviously a poster, which, I mean, you give credit for someone for being able to do some of the things he could do in the air. But when he's not finishing with that type of authority, there were some issues I had with his touch, just his ability to finish without the dunks all the time. And then the other guy who I would have had at 11, who ultimately didn't make my list, I do think was the better player at their peak. I just think that was probably the reason I left him off. But I could definitely see the avenue for him getting on. But ultimately, I just think the position is just a bit too stacked for me to have him in there.
Klay as well, obviously one of the greatest shooters of all time. I think you would have to put him on a top 5 shooters of all time. I think reasonably.
I mean, top 5 3-point shooter for sure. I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, and he was able to put up volume. Some of these players he played with great players. It's hard to judge. Like, do we give him too much credit? Do we give him not enough credit? Because they had more talent than maybe some other guys, and maybe less responsibility than some other guys.
The longevity held me back with Klay personally. That was
longevity. Yeah, and also just like the defense, I feel like he was a positive defender, but I do tend to fall more on the side of that. Most years he was just better than Steph. It was like his main talent on defense. He wasn't bad. He was a positive defender, but I don't think he was the lockdown defender that some people.
I definitely understand the case for Klay, especially if you are. Me personally, once again, I didn't say this. Don't really care too much about the accolades. No, I don't care at all about the accolades. So I'm not really factoring in the 4 championships, blah, blah, blah. So if you care about that stuff, then obviously I think that does help Klay's case. He was really important to those championships. I'm not taking anything away from him and his contributions. But I think the things that held me back with Klay for not having him in the top 10, the longevity. Obviously, it's not his fault. tearing his ACL and then tearing his Achilles right after. Everything I've seen from Klay since then has definitely not been to the level that would make this list. And then just in terms of his functionality, very limited as a ball handler. Probably the worst ball handler we're going to talk about. There's only one other player who even comes close in that regard, and I think he was just the clearly better offensive player. Amazing 3-point shooter. Very limited as a playmaker, very limited as a passer, didn't have many reads he could go to. So just overall, the limitations, I think, probably kept me lower on him, and then the longevity. But definitely understand the case for Klay being in the top 10, just not a case that I would subscribe to personally. Is there anything you guys want to add on Klay Thompson?
Yeah, I kind of want to just build off of what you said. Like Klay being so limited in so many areas does kind of hurt, specifically if you look at his playoff scoring numbers. Like there's a lot of runs in there where he just was not, like, people have a very nice recollection of what happened during those years, and then you look back at the numbers and it's like, what happened? Like in the 2017 run where the Warriors go 16-1, Klay averaged 15 points a game on 50% true shooting over that entire run. Like his scoring was basically a negative for the entire run that they go 16-1. But you get like those moments where he just goes absolutely crazy. The microwave games, like game 6 against OKC, where it's like, this guy's untouchable. I think Klay's a really good defender, but like Pirate said, not quite just like some defensive stopper. He was just like the guy on the perimeter, but also, you've got Iggy, Draymond, Bogut behind you. Like there's not really much that can go wrong if you're Klay Thompson. Not the best off-ball defender, but it's mainly the offensive limitations. It's the fact that you kind of have to have a specific system in place to get the juice out of him. You have to have the facilitators in Draymond and Iggy. You have to have the number one guy in Steph Curry. And I just don't think you can put him on his own team. Like Klay's such a nice guy if you already have a system in place and you just need to plug and play somebody. Such like the perfect player. But if you're really trying to build, like with these top 10 all-time shooting guards, a lot of them are, we're trying to build a championship roster around this guy. And I never viewed Klay as that type of guy, along with the longevity concerns.
I had a few like primary off-ball shooting guards on my list. I think all of them had more counters to where if you were to take away some of the off-ball actions, whether it's being able to attack closeouts, being better passers, being a better pull-up mid-range shooters. That's one of the things that took me away with Klay Thompson. He's still one of the better off-ball players in league history. I just didn't think he had as much counters as some of the other guys I put on my list. So that's one big thing I looked at with Klay, to where he just didn't make it for me.
Mr. Portability, leaving out Klay. Crazy. Is what it is. That was 12, Vincent Klay. They had 7 points. We are taking a major jump here in the points department. This player did come 11th, but there is a major jump. And the reason they came 11th is because we have a tie later on. So unfortunately, they would have been in the 10, but they just ultimately didn't make it. So with 27 points, so I believe that's more points than everyone we spoke about combined so far. And before I reveal who it is, I had this person in 10th. Ron had him in 7th. Where's that 6th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ron had him in 6th. KB had him in 7th. Penn had him in 4th. Dream had him in 10th. And Jordan had him in 8th. It is Manu Ginobili. That is who it is. It is Manu Ginobili. I guess I'll start since I'm the only one up here who had him. This is just someone who, he's not a superstar, but of any non-superstar, I think he's probably the perfect shooting guard. Just someone who could do quite literally everything you would want from someone who is playing next to elite talent in Tim Duncan or whoever the case may be. He was someone who could scale up the scoring. He was someone who could be a really good defender. He was someone who could really pass the ball, play out a pick and roll, had a really modern shot diet for the time. And this is unlike Pete Maravich. He benefited from having the modern shot diet. He was someone who was comfortable shooting the threes. He was comfortable getting to the rim and got to the rim a lot, got to the free throw line, really crafty at the rim, a bunch of counters in his drives, really unique handles, someone who no one could really stay in front of. And I think thus far, he is the best passer we've named. I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting. Pete Maravich, okay. One of the best passers we've named. Ultimately, I look at the 05 playoff run. That's something I hold really high in terms of Manu Ginobili's ability. I think from 05 to 2012-ish we're looking at one of the 2, 3, 4 best shooting guards in the NBA, one of the better players in the NBA. I know the counting numbers don't really suggest that when I look at his box score. Let me just read it right quick. From that, in that same stretch that I'm alluding to, we're only talking about a 2-time All-Star who averaged 17, 4, and 4. But his impact goes just way beyond the box score. Constantly, I know I spoke about this in the PCL maybe a year ago. All of San Antonio's best lineups feature Manu Ginobili, whether that's with him and Tony Parker, with him and Tim Duncan, without both of them, however you want to slice it. There was a direct correlation between Manu Ginobili's presence and the Spurs being a really good team. And I think that's because of all the things he could do, how malleable he was as a player. He wasn't someone who I'm not a believer in, if Manu had his own team, he could be James Harden. I don't subscribe to that belief. I think that's probably pushing it too far. But I definitely do believe his impact on the game definitely went above what his box score suggests. Really efficient scorer, really good outside shooter, really good passer, all of those things. I could go on all day about Manu Ginobili. But is there anything you guys want to say about Manu Ginobili?
I'd love to do a whole episode on Manu Ginobili. No, this was my first guy off. And it's like a brutal one to leave off because I do think I'm very high on Manu. Just like the only thing that for me kept him off was literally just the 10 guys ahead of him I just had as slightly better careers. Like there was nothing in Manu's game that I look at and I'm like, he needs to be out of my top 10. It was just there were 10 other guys. Like you said, there's a very consistent correlation with Manu on the court. The Spurs are the best team in the league. It was every year. Like their net rating is like plus 12, plus 13 when Manu's on the court. And obviously there's some stuff like spot minutes going up against bench units. There's obviously a little bit of juice to those numbers. And I do penalize him for not being able to be like a 36 to 40 minute per game type of guy. He did have some conditioning concerns, which actually I'll talk about with another guy who was playing like 45 minutes a game. Actually, that's the reason I prefer him. But could pretty much do everything. The one drawback I would say is very little in between game, which is actually the one reason why I would say you can't just put him on his own team and get like 25 points per game. He's a little bit specialized in that, like the 3-year layup type of thing that we see from Harden in Houston. But yeah, my point with Manu would be one, there's like a disconnect between the caliber of defender he was and what people remember. He was a really, really good team defender. He was always in the right spot, ferocious hands, just a great, great defensive playmaker. Two, just watch the 05 finals. That's all you have to watch. If you watch the 05 finals, you watch this all-time great Pistons defense versus this all-time great Spurs defense. Nobody can score whatsoever. And Manu looks like he's playing in 2025. It is insane. Like, he's just getting wherever he wants against an all-time great defense easily, has like a 65% true shooting sometime in that finals or something crazy. That would be my only selling point. 05 finals. Like if you think Manu doesn't deserve to be in this discussion, I don't know about fourth. I don't know about fourth.
Shout out to Penn. Yeah, shout out to Penn.
Like the 05 finals is just insane to watch.
Penn had him fourth.
Yeah, Penn had him fourth. I expected Ox to be the one to have him the highest. Yeah, I expected Ox to be the one to have him the highest, but he only had him at fifth. I was very surprised when I seen Penn had him at fourth.
To piggyback off some of the things you said, I think Manu downhill ability was really underrated, especially the way to like dribble through traffic and maneuver his body to get to the rim. He was a really good interior passer as well. He was a really good ball handler. I think he fit in multiple different situations, whether you asked him to be a shooter, he can be a shooter, especially off the dribble. I think he could be a really good defender at times, and he was a sneaky athlete as well. Again, I don't want to say like my only factor with him not being top 10 was because he was never able to really like be the clear-cut number one, but I did factor that in. Like, how would his defense look if he was the main focal point of an offense? Would his defense still be to the level that it was when he was coming in and when he was coming in through different moments of the game? But that's something I looked at.
That's a great point. And also I will say one thing that I do like about him in that like specialized offensive role, maybe the quickest off the catch decision maker in NBA history. Like he catches the ball and he's gone. You will never see the ball stick with that guy. And that just is such a nice complementary skill.
Pyro, you seem to be lower. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts. You seem to
Manu is a great player, but it's simply floor time is the number one issue. I mean, I'm sorry, like nobody else on this list, none of these other names that we're considering we're going out there for 25, 27 minutes a night. And
he was like 30 in his prime.
I will
he was
say,
30. He's 30 like once, right?
Around 30, damn near 30, damn near 30.
Counter,
in the playoffs, we're looking at 30.
My one counter would
I'm
be
just
like
saying,
34, 35 minutes a game in the playoffs, pretty consistently.
See,
The
playoffs he was playing minutes. Yeah, but then also combined, I think it's this whole overlapping of like team success and individual play. I feel like Manu and Tony Parker are they get extra credit. I think everybody, if you look back at the last 25, 30 years, almost everybody would agree the Spurs were the number one system championship team, right? As far as like the talent spread across the roster, no real number one, no Michael Jordans, no LeBron James, team play, passing the ball. And I feel like Manu and Parker have just, they got 4 rings and they earned it. And you can be the best player. A team like that is great for winning the championship. You get a bunch of B+, A- players, and that makes for a great team. But I don't think that automatically elevates that your A- player is now all of a sudden on the tier of other A+ players that have played and carry teams just because you were the best player on a spread out system team.
I think I'm higher on Manu. I just want to start with that. I think Manu was the Spurs' best offensive player for a few years.
Yeah.
You can decide what year. Yeah, you can decide what years they are. I think he was.
No, absolutely, I agree.
I think the minutes in the playoffs definitely did go up. The reason they're not as like his minutes fluctuated between series, which was like something like he wasn't just going to be 36 minutes regardless of series, but in certain matchups you'll find him he's playing 37 minutes one series and then it's 31 the next. And it's like part of that is because it's a better matchup, blah blah blah. Part of it's because they needed Manu more in this series, but also you hold. But I'm with you.
I'm just saying when you talk about Michael Jordan, Kobe, James Harden, you're not talking about matchups.
Yeah, I'm about to say that. That's the thing that also holds me back with Manu Ginobili. He isn't someone, and this is why I have an issue with like per possession numbers in general. Manu Ginobili's per possession numbers are going to look better than his box score numbers. But at some point, you have to be playing those actual possessions. It can't just all be theoretical. So I'm with you. That's why I have Manu Ginobili at 10. Because it is a lot more theoretical with him than it would be with some other players. But I do think his skill set, and I am someone who also values the ceiling raise and stuff, his ability playing on the second side, playing off advantages, playing out of closeouts. If Tim Duncan draws a double team and he's one pass away, a good shot is coming on that possession, as opposed to any other not any other, but a lot of other shooting guards in history. And then his ability to create his own advantage. He was someone who could flex between on ball, off ball, whatever you need. He could do that. And that's something that I find really valuable. But ultimately, the minutes played, how much he was relied upon consistently, then the longevity, all of those things contributed to me having him at 10. Is why I couldn't get him any higher. And I even considered having him at 11 or 12. In fact, I'm still not sold that I should have him at 10. The guy I have at 11, I'm really annoyed I don't have them on the list. So I could have taken Manu Ginobili off the list, but I'm really high on how good I think Manu Ginobili was.
Another point I'd add is that I do think Pirate kind of hinted at like the Spurs having that system and the ball movement and all that stuff, which I don't really think was the case before like 2011, 2012. That's when Popovich kind of started to implement the European, like the soccer concepts and the spacing and movement. Like you look back at like 04, 05, 06, it's lots of isolation and pick and roll like a normal offense. It's lots of Tim Duncan post-ups, Ginobili cutting off of that or playing off the catch. It's Ginobili spread pick and roll stuff. And I do think, like, again, my selling point would be the 05 finals in a series where the Pistons, as a team, 48% true shooting, Tim Duncan, 47% true shooting, Tony Parker, 47% true shooting, Ginobili plays 36 minutes a game and shoots 64% true shooting, and they barely win that 7-game series. To me, that's just like, that makes him like an A or A+ player to go into that environment and produce such efficient results. And that's something we saw consistently in the playoffs. Like, I think it was 07 or 06 against the Suns. There was a series like that too, where everyone was inefficient and he just goes insane. I do think, like, yes, a little bit more matchup dependent, a little bit less minutes, but in terms of just like the hyper efficient production he could give you, I just think just a crazy player to have on your team.
Yeah, well, I guess real quickly, I think I have a personal bias towards shooting guard, off ball efficient finisher archetype guy. You can get him the ball anywhere. He's going to finish at a high volume and high efficiency. Manu is more in, every player is pretty much not just one position, right? Every player is pretty much like a shooting guard / point guard or a shooting guard / small forward, right? Manu is a bit more in that shooting guard / point guard, not quite the most efficient. I mean, pretty good numbers in the playoffs, but a lot of seasons he was down around 40%. So really great player, not enough time on the floor for me, and not quite my vision of the most productive archetype to have it at shooting guard.
Totally understandable. I think him probably finishing at 11th is probably fair. So it is what it is, and he was comfortably 11th. So if I wanted to take him off the list, nothing would have changed. He still would have been 11th. Before we get into the top 10, we do have some super chats, and I think now is the perfect time to get into them. Kent Lipscomb Jr. actually said, "Man who's a top 5 shooting guard is easily logical for ball knowers." I'm not here to say guys do or do not know ball based on rankings. I'm very consistent on that. I don't think rankings are indicative of how much someone understands the game. Everyone has different values as long as they're consistent and they make sense. I don't care where you end up having people. I don't decipher ball knowledge by that. But anyway, shout out to Kent Lipscomb Jr., very well-known Spurs fan. In my chat, Alan R said Lou GM finally got himself a POA. I guess we can. I'll ask John D. You're the Lakers fan. Marcus Smart, good or bad? How happy are you? You're muted, but try again. Yeah.
See, I was just so ready to get into it. If he can stay on the floor, I think this is an amazing pickup. I think there were some days in the Boston years where Marcus Smart was a very questionable shooter based on the shot selection, where it's you really don't need to be making that shooting that shot. Sometimes they go in, but more times than not, they don't. On the other side of the floor, being able to guard bigger wings, being able to have minutes in the post. Now, I'm not saying he's like a fantastic post defender, but he's definitely willing to guard in the post. He has very active hands in the post. He can be a pest to the opposing team's best player, take a charge every now and then. And we have a center with motor issues. Marcus Smart can definitely help with that. He's definitely the type of guy where it's like, hey, DeAndre, and you're going to have to make that rotation. You're going to have to protect the rim. You're going to have to fight a little bit harder on the box. I think he's that type of player, and I really like the fit with LA. I really like the fit. I think he has to start. I mean, I think there's going to come a point in the season where you're kind of asking him to do a lot, because with Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves backcourt, you're going to be asked to do a lot defensively. But I think this was a good move, and I think this was a step in the right direction. So as long as he can stay on the floor, I think this is something we desperately needed, just some point of attack defense and defense, period. But, since we're the Lakers, people aren't going to look at it as a good move.
We will see. That's really all I have to say. We will see. I do think the Lakers are making good moves, to be fair. But we'll see how it shapes out. Masenk OG said 2018 Oladipo. What could have been? Very high on 2018 Oladipo, by the way. Very, very high on 2018 Oladipo. One of the better two-way guard seasons. Really, really talented player. It's very unfortunate. I hope he can get a place back in the league just to see what he can do, but the injuries have been brutal for him. But always love watching Oladipo play in 2018. Tito El Bandito said, Mars, would you ever consider going in depth in a video or stream about your top 15 to 25 players? Feels like the top 15 is somewhat concrete for everyone. I don't even like making top 10 lists, and I've had to make 6. So making a list that goes to 25, yeah, you're probably asking a little bit too much of me. I'm not these list things. I'm personally a tier person over lists in general, but lists are easier for content. But maybe one day, maybe next off season, I don't know. Drink More Water said, is the shooting guard position the most static position out of the 5? And if so, why do you think this is? To me, every other position has changed over the years, but it feels the teams asked the shooting guard to do similar things throughout time. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I do, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of rephrasing what I was saying before. Like, I mean, I think we all like, if you're a basketball fan, especially if you play 2K, and you like to think about all the different types of basketball teams you could create, right? And different skill sets at each position. And like I was saying, with shooting guard, for me at least, it is the most, like, no matter what kind of championship team I'm thinking of putting together. Again, I think shooting guard is the most well-defined of what I want. Yeah, like I want a 6'6", 6'7" guy, who can score from everywhere on the court, and who can defend the guard position. Whereas, yeah, I get way more creative with all kinds of wacky, centers or power forwards, or what you can do with the small forward. Point guard could be 6'9" or 6'1", but shooting guard, I think there are some prerequisites that you absolutely need to have, or you really want to have if you want to be successful.
Interesting. Do you think that's a good thing, or just say it is what it is?
I think it is what it is. It's the nature of the game. The what you want. The shooting guard is the player you want playing right off the point guard, and so you want him to have a particular skill set when it comes to shooting and scoring.
You guys have any thoughts on that?
I agree.
Yeah.
For the most part. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily what I want, but definitely, like, in terms of the scope of the league, the 2 and then probably the 3, like 1, 4, and 5 have gone all over the place. Like, I think 4 especially has just changed drastically. But yeah, 2s and 3s, like, obviously it's changed, like, more volume 3-point shooting and things of that nature, but the actual, like, role you're asked to play on a team around the league, the 2 is definitely pretty rigid.
Yeah,
I agree. Dyer, I don't know. Question for myself. There was a take by year 3 from me and other media heads that Wemby would be the best offensive and defensive player in the league. What do you think? Where do you see him in year 3? I don't see him being, I think he's already the best defensive player in the league. Do I see him being the best offensive player in the league? No, because if he was, I would say he's probably a top 10 player to ever play already. And I would love to see that, but I'm not willing to bet on that. But I do think Wemby could get to a space where he's one of the 10 best offensive players in the league. I do think he could get to that space depending on the play finishing, the in-between game, and then just ultimately just being stronger and less of the ball handling stuff, please. I know it's cool to like see it when it works, but there's a limit to how effective a 7'4" ball handler can be. And that's just physics. So less of that, more of the face-up stuff, more complete in the in-between game. And then just being a better play finisher. And I think he can be one of the 10 best offensive players in the sport because he has the potential to be the best play finisher. And then he also is an elite outside shooter. Well, has the touch to be an elite outside shooter, although he hasn't fully realized that potential yet. So I think he could be top 10. Number 1, no, because if Wemby was the best offensive and defensive player in the league today, I would argue that he's already the best player to ever play.
By a landslide.
That would mean he's better than Jokic on offense. If Wemby was that by year 3, I would be saying he's the best player to ever play. And I'd be saying that with no hesitation. So if he can do that, I'd love to see it. And then final super chat from Kareem NYK 2001. Rank 2020 Harden, 08 Kobe, 96 MJ, and 65 West. Any thoughts on this?
I'll go MJ, Kobe, Harden, West, off the top of my head.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd go MJ, Kobe, West, Harden. Probably.
2020 Harden was different, man. Like,
it was different.
I would go MJ. Yeah, I would go MJ, Kobe, West, Harden. MJ, Kobe, West, Harden.
Oh, that's a no, man. You got it. Okay. Harden was different. Yeah, he's lost. Okay, but anyway, on to the top 10. This is the moment you guys have been waiting for, about an hour in. If you are just joining us, you joined at exactly the right time. We had 19 total names. Joint 19th with 1 point, we had Sam Jones, Hal Greer, and Joe Dumars. In 16th with 2 points, we had Mitch Richmond. In 15th with 3 points, we had Sidney Moncrief. In 14th with 5 points, we had Pete Maravich. In 12th place, we had a first tie between Vince Carter and Klay Thompson with 7 points. And then just missing out on the top 10 with 27 points at 11th was Manu Ginobili. Okay. No.
Well, hey, since they didn't get anything, let me just shout out Lou Hudson and Earl Monroe.
Okay, you don't know that, but go ahead. You can shout out.
I'm pretty sure Lou Hudson.
Yeah, I
didn't
think-
make it.
I think it's solidly set in stone.
Okay, well, we will see. Shout out to Joe Folks. But we will see. At 10 with 39 points, so 12 points above Manu Ginobili. This is someone who John D had at 9th. Lowe had him at 7th. Tyler, you had him in 8th. Real Talk had him at 7th. Ox had him at 7th. Ron had him at 5th. KB had him in 6th. Dream had him in 7th. Jordan had him in 6th. And myself and Pirate did not have him, although he was my number 11. It is Tracy McGrady. Tracy McGrady does come in 10th with 39 points. Since you two, John D and Tyler, had him, I'm going to hand the reins over to you. I'm going to start with you, John D. Talk to me about Tracy McGrady.
I think me having him this low is just really because of the longevity, just not being able to string together. Like some of the guys I have above him is like they were able to scale back like later in their career to win and fit next to other superstar players, and I think Tracy McGrady just did not have the luck to play that long as these guys that I have ahead of him. But as a scorer, I think of his era, he was one of the best scorers in the league. Being a 6'9" shooting guard, being able to pass the way he did, to have the athleticism, the over-the-top shot making, be a really positive defender. I think Tracy McGrady was great. Like there were years where it's like this guy is giving you 30 a night, and he's like legitimately gives you like a bunch of counters, the pull-up 3-point shooting, the ability to get to the rim, the ability to make interior passes, the ability to pass in general, and still to be an extremely underrated defender. I just didn't think I could keep him off my list just because of the talent, but I didn't want to have him any higher because of like the longevity things.
Yeah, I had T-Mac 8th. I could have gotten him up to probably 7, as low as like 11, I think. Yeah, I think the only concern I really have is the longevity stuff that John D just talked about. You only get like what 6 or 7 all-star caliber years out of him. But I do think there's like a 5-year stretch where he's probably maybe 4 years where he's probably an MVP level player. I think specifically 03 is just one of the highest peaks we've ever seen from any player ever. What is it? 32 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, volume 3-point shooting efficiently, getting to the free throw line over 10 times a game and making those, clear positive defensively, gets to the rim. Basically the ideal do-it-all wing. He's like a 6'8" shooting guard. I think criminally underrated ball handler, probably like on a short list of the top 5 or 6 ball handlers ever above 6'7". Also, really, really good passer, which has just gotten lost in time. No one remembers that T-Mac was one of the best passers in the league during that time. I just think in 03, he had an argument. I'd probably even say he was the best offensive player in the NBA. It was him and Kobe and Shaq. Those were like the 3. And T-Mac was crazy, man. T-Mac, like 02 and 03 T-Mac was just an absurd player. And he's the ultimate example of what Pirate was talking about, where it's like, let's not penalize a guy for the team he's on. Like, yes, he blew a 3-1 lead to the Pistons. How in the world was he up 3-1 in the first place? Look at the team he's playing on, man. Like going up 3-1 on that Pistons team with that supporting cast is absolutely ridiculous. Could literally do everything on the court. So yeah, I think T-Mac at his peak, like 4th or 5th best shooting guard. But yeah, the longevity is just the only thing holding him back.
Yeah, my favorite player of all time. I've been very consistent saying that. Broke my heart to have him outside the top 10. Also, the Pistons should probably indirectly credit T-Mac for their championship, because without him, Tayshaun Prince probably doesn't get the opportunity he got, because that's probably what won them that series in 03. But anyway, yeah, 03 T-Mac, all-time special season. My issue, the thing that led me to being more hesitant on T-Mac is ultimately I'm not as high on the Rocket stuff. Post 05, I don't think T-Mac is particularly as good anymore. I think you're looking at a stretch from 01 to 05 where T-Mac is the best or second best shooting guard in the league. In 03, I could argue that he was the best 2 guard in the league just based on that season. That's the season where the 3-point volume is maximized. He's hitting the 3 at an elite clip. He's playing defense. He's, I want to say, the best passer in the league at the 2 guard position. I completely fight against the narratives that T-Mac didn't play defense. I think that's a ridiculous narrative. I think that's actually I genuinely think that's stupid. Like, I'm going to call it what it is. I think it's stupid that you think T-Mac didn't play defense. My issues with T-Mac, some of the shot selection stuff, you can put some of it on the fact that he didn't have the greatest offensive help, but there's also just countless times where he has driving lanes and he's opting for hezzy pull-ups. That's just what his shot diet was. I wasn't sure he was comfortable shooting. Some of the similar issues I had with Vince Carter, some of the touch around the rim could be a bit erratic, but really good getting to the free throw line, really good outside shooter, really good passer, really good defender, elite size for the position. The issue I have is once you get past 05, the defense takes a major dip. The offensive consistency takes a dip. The outside shooting never really was the same post 03 in general. So once all of those things start adding up, you start going from an MVP level player, top 5 level player, to now you're a top 15, top 20 level player. And it's like, am I valuing 3 years at a top 5 MVP-ish level and then 4 more years at a top 15 level over some of the guys I have on this list? Maybe, maybe not. That's why I could get him as high as 10. 10 was about as good as I was going to go. Well, actually, let me look at my list. I don't want to lie to the people. 10 was about as good as I was going to go. I could convince myself as 9, but really 10 was as high as I could go. But he is my favorite player. I do think if it was just purely peaks, he'd be in my top 5. I don't even think twice about that. He'd be in my top 5. But unfortunately, longevity is a part of this, and he just didn't put together enough years for me to put him in my top 10. Pyro, what are your thoughts on Tracy McGrady?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. Physically, one of the most gifted players who's ever played. Prototypical physique, tremendous scorer. Could be a solid defender, could be a lackluster defender as well. Mars said you said you don't see any argument. I mean, on defense, I see some knock against him.
You see an argument that he's a bad defender?
No, not a bad overall defender. But again, we were talking, what type of shooting guard are you, right? I mean, I feel like Tracy McGrady is most definitely a shooting guard / small forward.
Yes.
Ideally, I think small forward is probably the best position for Tracy McGrady, although there's not much of a drop-off. He is talented to play both. I'd say if he's 100 at small forward, he's maybe a 95 at shooting guard. Just, again, he was athletic, and when he put his mind to it, he definitely had the skill to defend the wing and to defend scores. But just the nature of being that tall, he could have trouble just having enough endurance during the course of the game to get back on defense, and also guarding some of the smaller, quicker guys. But overall, I mean, I could validate having T-Mac as high as like number 7. I could make an argument for that. He was tremendously talented, not the longest career. Not as efficient as I would like, considering his tremendous physical gifts and his ability. And I, as far as intangibles, like personally watching his career, I was never scared of Tracy McGrady. Like, is Tracy McGrady going to go and win the ring this year? It just never, it never felt like that. He felt like at times a somewhat lackadaisical player, and he said this himself, and coaches have said this, and teammates have said it. You know, he was not the hard, for all the talent that he was given. I feel like he could have achieved more. What he did achieve was still historic and all-time great, but
I think you're a bit too low on T-Mac, personally.
I have him right outside the top. Yeah, I said,
I think you're underselling the defense. Like, he offered real rim protection as a 2-guard, real rim protection.
Sometimes, yeah, so, but Mars,
very versatile.
There were a lot of plays where he's not getting back on defense.
I think a lot of what Pirate is saying is very fair, but my only pushback would be, you look at the 01 season, his first season in Orlando, and he's a legitimate, probably all defensive caliber guy. As the years go on in Orlando, it really tapers off. And I think the argument Mars would be making is that if he wasn't so overtasked offensively to the point where every single possession has to run through him, you can get a better balance of the 03 type of offense and then like the 01 type of defense. Like, and it's really just a team thing. Like, he got really shafted during his peak.
The motor was questioned. There's only one Kevin Garnett. I'm gonna just start there. There's only one Kevin Garnett that can be leveraged with the task he was leveraged with, and then still have an all-time motor. But when I say there's no argument for him to be a bad defender, that does not mean that he didn't have flaws. I do think the motor was a very clear flaw that could wane. It could come and go. You look at like 04, for example. I don't even think T-Mac was really engaged on defense that year at all. To be honest, I mean, the team won like 25 games. So I mean, you could just be like, why would you? But that does take a knock against you. But when I talk about his ability to play defense and overall his value on that side of the ball in the years I'm talking about, even back to Toronto, he was a good defender. Just the offense wasn't to a level yet. But from 99 to 05, with 04 being a year that I could look at and be like, we'll leave 04 out of this. 99, 2000, 01, 02, 03, and 05. A clear positive on defense, in my opinion.
Well,
someone who offered major versatility, major utility. Could switch, could rim protect, all of those things.
Yeah, sure.
Play passing lane. So definitely not a bad defense.
Here's what I'm seeing on defense though, because like we all have to agree, even the greatest defenders who have ever played, you're not like an A+ at every aspect of defense, right?
Absolutely.
So I think part of this is just his frame of being 6'8", and then a combination of being 6'8" and being a high volume scorer who gets inside near the rim a lot. So what I'm saying, if you're playing the 2 position, a big part of just fundamental basketball is that you want your guards to be the first line of defense. When the opposing team brings the ball into their half court, you want to have a guard there to be able to pick up the ball and to be the first line of defense. Ideally, every time, every play of the game, right? But just T-Mac's physical build combined with his scoring profile, combined with just frankly not having the greatest motor, I feel would put him out of position that some other guards would find themselves in better positions more consistently game in, game out.
I think that's a pretty fair argument. Again, I'd kind of lean back to the team thing. Like you look at, I think a good actual comparison is same conference. You got like the Sixers during that era and the Magic during that era. Everyone kind of goes to those Iverson era 76ers and they're like, there was no offensive talent next to him. And great point. He has to create everything on offense. But the difference was that he could then go on the other end and he's just surrounded by so many good athletic defenders. The Sixers no one are the number 1 defense. T-Mac was like, I got to do everything on offense like Iverson. Then I go back to defense and I'm also expected to be the first or second best defender on this team. And it's just like, that's just not a recipe where you're going to get very good results. And I think like you look at some of these other all-time great shooting guards we're going to talk about, they had guys next to them that could take on some of that responsibility. Like I think Kobe's a good example where at his peak, it's like Ariza, you can go guard that wing, or Artest, you can go guard that wing. McGrady never got that until like the late Rockets years where you get Shane Battier on the team.
Shout out to Shane Battier, by the way.
Shout out to Shane Battier. That's a hooper.
All time.
Shane Battier said he was the best passer. T-Mac was the best passer he's ever played with.
Really? I did not know that.
That's what Shane Battier said.
And he played with LeBron James.
I don't think he's that far off. T-Mac was a hell of a passer.
T-Mac was a very good passer, yeah.
Amazing.
And just to be totally clear, so Mars, I think as far as defense, if T-Mac finds himself in position where he's squared up against a pretty good scorer, and he's able to use his physical ability, he's a very good defender. But just putting yourself in the primary, most optimal position game in, game out. That's.
And I also agree with that. And I also think like another pushback point with T-Mac, if I was going to like talk myself out of having him 8th, is that you could very well make an argument that 03 was an outlier year because he does have like this outlier high jump shooting numbers that he never replicated. And it's like, if he had his normal jump shooting, maybe then we don't look at his peak as favorably. I think that's kind of a fair thing to push back on as well. Yeah, it's just T-Mac's definitely one of the harder players to evaluate out of anyone. Cause it's like, what do you do with the injuries? What do you do with the defense? What do you do with the shooting? Very weird player.
Absolutely. And that's why he's my favorite. But he did come in at 10th. With 39 points. In 9th, with 41 points. So very, very close. I had this guy at 5th. John D had this guy at 5th. Low had him in 9th. ZZ had him in 9th. Tyler, you had him 5th. Chill had him 8th. Real Talk had him 9th. Ox did not have him. Ron did not have him. KB had him 9th. Pirate, you had him 10th. Gifted had him 9th. Penn did not have him. Riv did not have him. Dream had him 8th. Swiper had him 8th. Jordan did not have him. And Sean had him 8th. That is the one, the only. Another one of my favorite players, Reggie Miller. Tyler, I know you're quite high on Reggie Miller, so why don't you start us off? Talk to me about Reggie Miller and why you had him 5th.
Yeah, Reggie Miller was one of the few off-ball guys in NBA history that you could legitimately build an elite offense around. The Pacers consistently churned out number 1, number 2 playoff offenses, and it was all built around Reggie run around this screen, and the defense is not going to know what to do. I think Reggie's one of those guys who gets penalized for being so far ahead of his time, but in the sense that him being so far ahead of his time actually boosted his value. Because you get volume 3-point shooting, you get a ton of free throws, you get this hyper efficient scoring profile that the league didn't know what they were witnessing yet with Reggie, and I think he got penalized for that historically. He only makes 3 all-star teams, an all-NBA team here and there. Playoff scoring profile off the charts. Kevin Durant as a member of the Warriors, playoff scoring was 29 points per 75 possessions on plus 10% relative true shooting. That was Reggie Miller's scoring playoff numbers over the entire 90s decade, was 29 points per 75 possessions on plus 10% relative true shooting. He was arguably the most efficient scorer in NBA history, between the ability to run around screens and hit jumpers, but also the 1 or 2 dribble pull-ups, the just such an elite scorer. The problem is, not a great defender. I think he's a good pesty man defender, but not someone who's going to bring a ton of value, just going to hold his own. And then obviously a limited playmaker. He could make a quick read off the catch, but not someone you're going to put the ball in his hands and say, hey, go create an advantage for our team. The thing with Reggie, though, is that while I do view some of these other guys as having higher peaks, like T-Mac, peak for peak, much better than Reggie, in my opinion. Even going back off the list, Vince Carter, in my opinion, had probably a better peak season than Reggie Miller, that 0-1 season. The thing with Reggie is that he was an all-star level player for 14 years. You just get year after year after year after year of Reggie being such a valuable player. And that's why the Pacers were always having a shot to win a championship. They never broke through, but Reggie was always a consistent presence that put that team in a position to compete for a championship for a decade and a half. And I think Reggie to me, 5th best shooting guard career-wise, probably 8th or 9th peak-wise, but I love Reggie's game, man.
Yeah, I had him 5th too, so I think it goes without saying I'm very high on Reggie. The longevity definitely is what bolstered him up the list. I think the peak does lag behind Tracy McGrady. Vince Carter's another good one. I do think his peak lags behind, but it's funny because he only did make 5 all-star teams, and we're saying he was all-star caliber for well over a decade. But I don't care about the accolades. He was better than Mitch Richmond. No disrespect to Mitch Richmond, who came up earlier. I think he was just better than him. I think he's the 2nd best off-ball player ever, in my opinion. Steph being number 1. Shout out to Steph from last week. Amazing shooter. I think he's easily one of the 5 greatest shooters ever. Well ahead of his time. High 3-point volume for the time. Elite in the mid-range. Really good floater that he would get to. Really crafty drawing fouls. Some of the leg kicks and stuff. But even just around the basket. Wasn't a very slight frame, but understood how to draw contact and sell contact. One of the OG floppers. Now, however you like that, that's up to you to decide. But one of the OG floppers. Defensively, yeah, probably a lot better as a man defender than an off-ball defender. One of the things that I guess a lot of people hold Reggie back for is the numbers. He's averaging 18, 19 a game. Only 3 rebounds, only 3 assists. The rebounds, I can definitely say it was a very conscious decision by the Pacers to have Reggie leak out in transition to get some threes. So his rebounding numbers were definitely affected by that. And I'm not saying that makes him a better or worse rebounder. Just adding some context for anyone who may have not watched Reggie. And then another thing about his per game averages, the Pacers played one of the slowest brands of basketball in the NBA. They were a really, really, really slow team. So although he played heavy minutes, I think he's one of the players where I think per possession averages probably do him more justice in terms of just how effective he was on a per possession basis. He is one of the most efficient playoff scorers. You gave the numbers right there. I don't really need to get back into it. Damn. We're talking about many postseason runs where the Pacers are really, really good postseason offense, and that's in large part because of what Reggie's able to do off the ball. And he provided that value all the way until he was gone, really. Like, he wasn't all-star caliber when he retired, but the off-ball value was still there. The shooting ability was still there. He still provided that level of spacing and all of those things, to where I'm looking at Reggie. It's major longevity, major offensive juice, someone who is able to be a unconventional, but still nonetheless an offensive focal point, centerpiece of consistently really good offenses. Normally that's a recipe for, oh yeah, this guy's really good, he's top 5. But because he did it so unconventionally, I think people look at it as like, yeah, is he better than insert shooting guards? It's like, well, for me, yes, but I understand why there is more pushback. But yeah, had Reggie at 5. You had Reggie at 5. John D, you also had Reggie at 5. So talk to me about Reggie Miller. Yeah, Harry, you're the only one here.
I thought I liked Reggie, but I guess not.
Not enough.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head when you say like a player before his time. Being able to be so like pivotal as an off-ball player, and the counters and the decision making he had as an off-ball player, where it's like, okay, you guys are going to play heavy on this pin down. Now I'm just going to cut back to the rim and get an easy layup, or I'm going to really make a really open shot around the mid-range or around the 3-point line. And another thing that I just realized, he never missed games. He never missed games throughout like an 18-year season where it's like 82 games played, 74, 82, 82, 82, 82, 79. Like, he was always on the floor, and he was always getting the best he could out of off-ball looks. And on top of that, he could make plays with the ball in his hand. I wouldn't say he was the best creator with the ball in his hand, but that's something he could go to as well. One of the greatest shooters of all time and greatest off-ball players of all time. And how seamless he could fit with other players with his off-ball movement, cut into the basket, and being a really good shooter. So I valued that, and I had Reggie Miller at 5.
Pirate?
Yeah, I mean, I had him at 10. Reggie is a shooter.
He is.
Reggie's a shooter. I mean, that's pretty much, the most you can say about him. He was a one-dimensional player. He's probably the most one-dimensional player on this list. I'd say his floor game was. I'm just striking a distance, I guess, because you guys have it at number 5. So I'm trying to point out why I wouldn't have it at number 5. But again, shooting guard. No priority is shoot the ball, score the ball, and Reggie Miller was a prototype in that aspect of the shooting guard position. That's why he's here. He's one of the greatest shooters of all time. But just compared to some of the other guys, I'd say total floor game lacking. Not a great passer. I would say not a great defender. Reggie was a frail man. Not a very strong man. So he was limited in that way. He was tenacious though. So as far as the mental side of the game, like, do you trust this guy? Is he giving you 100% all the time, the whole game? Reggie was one of those guys. And he's going to give you the 20 points a game on high efficiency. He's a bit ahead of his time with the shooting. Who knows exactly, how many points he would be able to score in a league like today with more space and, a less defensive pressure. So, but I would say just what kept him, for me, outside of that, like top 5 types here, would be the limited floor game.
So what you're saying is that Tracy McGrady just needed the Reggie Miller tenacity, and he would have been. Oh
yeah, I think if Tracy McGrady had Reggie Miller's motor, Tracy McGrady, I think.
Let me ask you this, because I was thinking about this. Like, you made the interesting point with like the mental side of T-Mac and like the fear. Would you say you like kind of? I feel like teams feared Reggie Miller during the playoffs.
Yeah.
In the playoffs.
Well, there you go. Yeah. If I'm sitting down watching a playoff game between a T-Mac game and a Reggie Miller game, I mean, once we get in crunch time, I'm feeling like Reggie's on the cusp of heating up.
Like, Knicks fans will never admit
it. Which is ironic because T-Mac did have that. What was it? 13 points in 9 seconds. Yeah. So
I mean, Reggie had 8 and 8. So
yeah, Reggie did have that streak. But I would say that T-Mac's streak was a little less representative of total sample.
Knicks fans will never admit that they feared. They'll never admit that they feared Reggie Miller, but Knicks fans feared Reggie Miller.
They still hate him 30 years later, and to be honest, I don't blame them.
Reggie Miller to me was like, you guys are probably too young, but there used to be an old Looney Tunes cartoon where like the big bad bulldog gangster was walking down the alleyways, and then he had his little Chihuahua sidekick who was like nipping at his heels and jumping over like the hype man. I feel like that was like Reggie Miller's attitude. Like he was a feisty guy, even though like he's not like, you're not getting knocked out by Reggie Miller, but he acted like he was the toughest guy on the floor.
Way too young to understand that reference, but
Same here.
The analogy makes sense though. I like the description.
Just for reference, in back-to-back conference finals runs in 94 and 95. Now, if you want to tax it for saying MJ wasn't there, technically he was there in 95, but if you want to tax it, you can. Reggie Miller averaged 29 points per 75 in 94 on +7 relative true shooting, and then followed that up in 95, averaging 29 points per 75 on +10.5 relative true shooting. This is just one of the all-time great playoff scorers.
Can I ask you,
yes,
is that relative true shooting relative to the league or opposing defense?
I mean, if you want to go relative to the opposing defense, defense, it gets even better when you factor in the Hawks, Knicks, and Magic. It gets even better because his scoring was so impenetrable because of the nature of it. Reggie wasn't, because Mark Jackson had the ball. Reggie Miller was just causing havoc away from the ball, and it was like there was two threats at once simultaneously on the court. And Reggie Miller had a little bit of like the Steph Curry gravity stuff, like just 30 years before it, or 20 years before it, where there were times he would come off pin downs and draw two defenders, and it leads to guys wide open at the rim, or more often than not wide open for mid-range jumpers, because there was another big clog in the lane anyway. But like he did have that type of playmaking where it was the non-box score playmaking. But yeah, if you wanted to factor in relative to the opponent defense, because I remember I checked that maybe a while ago, maybe, because the Hawks were a really good defense that year with their lineup. The Knicks, obviously, an amazing defense in the mid-90s, and then the Magic with Shaq and them. So yeah, relative to the opponent defense, it was even better. But point is, Reggie Miller is one of the great playoff scorers. Definitely gets undersold in that regard, but I'm very high on Reggie Miller.
And before we move on from Reggie, I do want to make one last point. A lot of people group him in with Klay. Two huge differences. One, they're both limited floor game, but Reggie's ability to attack off the catch, like on the move, off of screens, and get to the mid-range and the floater, made him a much more resilient 2-point scorer. The other thing, Klay Thompson at his peak would give you two or three free throws a game. That's it. Reggie would give you 8 or 9. That is a world of difference in terms of efficiency. Like if Klay can give you 20 with those 3 free throws, those extra 6 free throws are Reggie getting to 26 with the same amount of shots. And I think that's the big difference people kind of miss when they group Reggie and Klay together, just because they're both off-ball shooters.
That's a good point. No, that is a good point.
Klay
played defense. So
Klay played better defense than Reggie. Yeah,
he did.
But also, quickly going back to the physique, Reggie didn't have a muscle on him, but as for being an off-ball shooter, much like Steph, that can be an advantage where you're a little whippet. He didn't have the body weight that would keep him pinned to a part of the floor. He was able to stop and cut extremely well, and then you don't forget how tall he was. He was a legit 6'7" with good wingspan. So we're carrying no body weight. He was able to stop and start real well, quick release, and higher release than most defenders who were on him. So prototypically, a lot of what you want out of a shooting guard.
Yep.
Shout out to Reggie Miller. He did come in 9th place with 41 points. We are now on to 8th, 47 points, so 6 more points than Reggie Miller. For reference, I had this man in 9th. Once again, I will talk about him. I'm not entirely sold on my placement. I think I should have him higher, but I'm not changing it. I had him 9th. John D, you had him 10th. Low had him 8th. ZZ did not have him. Tyler, you had him 10th. Chill had him 9th. Real Talk had him 6th. Ox had him 8th. Ron did not have him. KB had him 10th. Pirate, you had him 3rd. Gifted had him 6th. Gifted had him 6th. Penn did not have him. Riv had him 8th. Dream did not have him. Swiper had him 7th. Jordan had him 7th. And Sean had him 6th. That is the one, the only Iceman, George Gervin, Pirate. The floor is yours. Obviously, you had him thirds. So talk to us, young peasants, about George Gervin and what we are missing.
Well, so what did he end up at 8th?
He came in 8th with 47 points.
Okay, so I mean, it's good to see that people haven't completely forgotten the Iceman. But again, just what do you want out of a shooting guard? Good God, George Gervin, 6'7", long and lean, perfect physique, 4-time scoring champ. Again, for me, there's a huge difference between guys who give you 30 and guys who give you 30 on high efficiency. George Gervin was able to play shooting guard. Come and give you over 30 points a game at over 50% shooting, score from anywhere on the floor. His shooting profile is so underrated by the masses these days. As far as George Gervin had no set release. He could release the ball. He could pivot, shake a defender, release the ball from the left, the right, adjust every shot, and it would just go into the basket. You know, he was 84% free throw shooter. He was able to knock down any open shot from the perimeter that you got him. You know, he was before the 3-point line. But again, great finisher in transition, great finisher along the baseline cuts and dunks. And the number one thing I think he's probably most underrated in was George Gervin's post game. This is one of the greatest post games that you will ever see from a guard. Legitimately, a lot of the times it's like watching a 6'7" Akeem. The way that he had every post move in his bag at 6'7" as a shooting guard. He had drop steps, he had fades, he had up and unders with the best of them consistently year after year. So yeah, I rank George Gervin extremely highly.
Clearly. I expected it, though, to be fair. And I'm not mad at it. George Gervin, someone who I spoke about earlier, the ABA years, unfortunately, just aren't a factor for me in terms of the longevity stuff. So that is about 3 years extra that George Gervin could have had that he's missing out on. And then I do think I probably had him too low. I had him at 9. Wait, did I have him at 9 or 8? Sorry. I had him at 9. I do think I had him a bit low. Just too lazy to change it. All-time great scorer, ridiculously efficient, really good off the ball, could score with the ball in his hands. To Parrot's point, I do think my generation, the younger generation, only seemed to think he was just spamming finger rolls.
Yeah. You don't lead the league in scoring 4 years off a finger roll.
It definitely was a lot more than that. But I think that's a testament to his touch and to Parrot's point about his ability to adjust. He was like, I've heard the Kevin Durant comparisons. In terms of a physical profile, it does make sense because his arms were just longer than everyone. He was just doing things that made him look like a spider out there. Mid-range game was amazing. To Parrot's point about the post game was really good. And although the playmaking or whatever left like things to be desired, I think George Gervin, with how efficient of a scorer he was, and what separated, and I know Pirate's high on this other guy, he's not on today's list, he's not a shooting guard. What separated from me from a guy like Adrian Dantley was how quick he was able to get to what he was getting to. Yeah. It wasn't wasted possessions with George Gervin. It wasn't, if George Gervin doesn't score, well, we just better hope we get the rebound because our possession's wasted at this point. George Gervin was very good within the flow of the offense. And shout out to Doug Mo, revolutionary coach. When he was in San, just running, gunning, George Gervin being that super efficient half-court scorer. And the Spurs routinely had some of the best offenses in the NBA. And I think a large part of that is because of George Gervin's half-court game. He was someone who, in the league at the time, probably was the best half-court scorer in the NBA.
Absolutely.
I don't
Kareem?
think, unless I forget him. We don't care about him. We're good on him. And by the time we get to 81 and 82, Gervin's better by the time we get to then. If you want to go 77 to 80, okay, yeah, Kareem got it. I forgot about him. He's tall and stupid. But 81, 82, 83, yeah, I got George Gervin.
And Mars, a lot of people know the leading the league in regular season scoring 4 times, led the league in playoff scoring 6 times. I mean, he was not. He was a playoff dropper. He was not in the playoffs.
Yeah, they just lost a lot, but that wasn't because of like this is another Spurs team similar to what we spoke about with T-Mac and anyone else who we brought up, who Mitch Richmond. teams just weren't great. Like, quite frankly, the teams just weren't great. You weren't expecting the Spurs to win championships. But George Gervin was someone, his scoring did translate to the playoffs. So you couldn't stop him from putting the ball in the basket. And ultimately, that led to really good offensive results for a pretty long time. We're talking about once the merger happens in 77, we're looking at 77 till about 84, 85. George Gervin is one of the better scorers in the NBA. And just in terms of like peak years, you're looking at 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, all the way up until about 83. I would argue he's the best or second best scorer in the NBA over those stretch of years. That's extremely valuable and is why I think I probably put him too low. But you guys talk to me about George Gervin.
I think my 9 and 10 could definitely be over my 7 and 8. Like, the only thing that stopped me with George Gervin is, one, he did play 4 years in the ABA. I can't find that footage at all. I've tried to look for it. He is one of the more entertaining players to watch in the 70s, in my opinion. The way he was able to get to the rim, his wingspan gave him like a really good advantage to get cleaner shots, especially in traffic and in the mid-range, to touch around the rim. Pirate, like you said, out of the post with jump hooks and finger rolls were also really good. Mars, you brought up the playmaking stuff. But yeah, as a scorer, he was like 27, 29, 33, 4-time scoring champ. 6 times he led the postseason in scoring. So I think he had to be on this list. So I put him at number 10.
What's super interesting is I agree with everything Pirate said, who had him at 3rd, and I had Gervin 10th. I think Gervin is probably the most underrated scorer in NBA history. I actually think, like, if I were to make a scorers list all time, I'd start considering him at like 6 or 7. Like, honestly, just on the shooting guard list, I think he can pretty much stack up with anyone as a scorer that isn't named Michael Jordan. Gervin was a freakishly good scorer, and like Pirate said, it translated to the playoffs. Like, he got to the line, he got to the mid-range, he got to the rim. He was basically a flawless scorer in many ways during that era. Like, obviously there's no 3-point line, so that's like, he's not shooting from long range. Just simply a flawless scorer, damn near. But it's kind of similar to what happened with the Mitch Richmond thing, where I'm like, I think where Gervin lacks, and obviously he's on a completely different level from Richmond, but I do think it's some of those other areas. Like, he's a limited playmaker, like you said. Obviously he's a quick decision maker, can play off the ball, but you're still getting like 2 or 3 assists from him. And when you're an offensive centric guy, that's just kind of like holding him back from being some of these other guys. The main problem, though, that nobody has brought up, Gervin was a really bad defender. Like, he was like, the steal and block numbers look okay, but in my opinion, Gervin's like even a considerably worse defender than James Harden on this list. Like, Gervin could not defend anything at all. So like, for me, it's like, yes, the hyper efficient scoring gives you such a nice floor to build off of as a player, but like, if you're not a high level playmaker and you're in my opinion, the worst defender on this list pretty comfortably, it's just hard for me to get him anywhere higher than like 6 or 7.
Pyro?
No, I mean, I could understand those knocks with the defense. I would say his defense kind of along the lines of Tracy McGrady, where his defensive skill set is a bit misplaced at shooting guard, where he's probably a better inside defender than he was.
I agree.
Defender. So, I mean, and that can be a positive. A lot of times, you are going to end up defending on the interior, and it's good to have a good interior defense at shooting guard. But yeah, I mean, not the quickest feet on the perimeter.
And then another guy who has like the frail build, kind of like Reggie.
Yeah. No, very, very frail build.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, at shooting guard with Reggie and just off-ball scores like Steph, there's some disadvantages, but I think that would help him get to his spots. So yeah, that was the defense. I forget. Did you make 2 points? What was the other one?
The other one was just the playmaking. Just like
yeah. Okay. So again, and that's probably just my personal bias and what I look for out of a shooting guard. I don't care too much about assists and playmaking from shooting guard. I mean, I think everything is a bonus if you get an assist or if you get a block, if you get a steal, it's nice. But I'm not prioritizing assist at shooting guards. I really when I watch a game, I love the shooting guards line to be something like 35 points, 13 of 19 shooting, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. Like I'm fine with that.
And Gervin's your guy. If that's what you're going for, Gervin's
number
guy.
3. So I mean,
I do think that is a good point. I actually think like if we're going peak for peak, I actually think him and Reggie are very comparable in my opinion. They have a lot of the same strengths and flaws. I think Gervin's a better volume scorer, better ball handler. I do think Reggie has a little bit more utility on the perimeter defensively. I do think his movement and shooting created more space. But I do think where I would prefer Reggie is just you get so many more years out of him that I think Gervin had a shorter lived prime. So that's where I would prefer Reggie's career.
Before we move on, Tyler, you said he's the worst defender on the list.
Yes, I know who you're going to say
that. Yeah, you're convinced of that.
I still think Gervin's a worse defender than the guy you're going to say.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Anyway, that was George Gervin at 8. We are on to number 7 now. This guy had 53 points, so 6 more points than George Gervin. I had him at 6. Is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, I had him at 6. John D, you had him at 8. Lowe had him at 10. ZZ had him at 6. Tyler, you had him at 6. Your list is looking eerily similar to mine. Chill had him at 7. Real Talk had him at 8. Ox did not have him. I was very surprised about that. Ron had him at 9. KB had him at 8. Pirate had him at 7. Gifted had him at 8. Penn had him at 9. Riv had him at 7. Dream had him at 5. Swiper had him at 10. Jordan did not have him, and Sean had him at 9. We are talking about what many people consider to be the second greatest shooter of all time, Ray Allen. I'm a start. Why not? I'm a start. Ray Allen, to me, one of the all-time great shooters. I think that goes without saying. I think for better or worse, well, definitely for worse, a lot of people just think of Ray Allen and they think of Boston, where he wasn't the same guy he once was, because that's where he had the most team success, obviously won a championship. But Ray Allen was someone who, in comparison to a guy like Reggie Miller, could definitely do more with the ball in his hands. He was someone who could create off the bounce, who could run pick and rolls, elite pull-up jump shooters, particularly from the mid-range, well ahead of his time in terms of three-point volume. We're looking at someone who was routinely top 2, top 3 in the league in three-point volume on a per-possession basis. The only guys who are really rivaling him, you're looking at Baron Davis and like Jason Williams, who are nowhere close in terms of efficiency. Ray Allen was well ahead of his time, uber efficient scorer. When you look at some of the offenses he was able to churn out in Milwaukee, some of the best offenses in the league. I think in 01, I think they were the best offense in the league statistically, even ahead of a team like the Lakers.
They were.
I know John D is going to talk about the 05 Sonics because he loves that team. But just someone who was consistently a part of really, really good offenses, someone who used his size really well. If he had smaller guards on him, he could play in the post. That was something that was really intriguing. Going back and watching him for the first time, it was something that no one told me about with Ray Allen. He did have that ability to use his size defensively. We'll just say it was didn't hurt his team, but didn't ultimately help his team a whole lot. But someone who offensively just had so much utility, and then the longevity was something that was really valuable. We're talking about someone who came in the mid to late 90s and then was really valuable up until like 2011, 2012. And then, I mean, obviously the big shot he hit in 2013, obviously not the same player by that point, but still hitting one of the biggest shots in NBA history. So the longevity, along with the outside shooting, the creation, the ability to be a focal point of really good offenses, and then being able to scale back and be someone who could complement other pieces. I'm really high on Ray Allen. And that is why I had him right behind Reggie Miller at 6. Who wants to go next?
I think Ray Allen has led a lot of really good offenses to be able to stack up against that Suns team throughout 05 to 07 as a really good offense. I think they had multiple top 3 to top 5 offenses, that Supersonics team, and they also had the best offense in the league with Milwaukee. There was a year where they had the best offense in the league. I think a lot of people look at Ray Allen as just a 3-point shooter, but them early years in Milwaukee, he did really good at attacking closeouts, and he had the athleticism to get to the rim consistently, in my opinion. But then you add on that added shooting, and then the ability to play in pace, which I also deemed very valuable. He was a really good off-ball player, like you said. He was a good defender, solid defender. I don't think like it's something that where you would point at his defense and be like, this is why I had him on the list. But yeah, I don't think he hurt his team as much. But the only thing I really deemed with Ray Allen was sometimes it looked like in the playoffs he just struggled to like create shots with the ball in his hand as much as some of the other guys I have on this list. So that's why I didn't have him at like in my 6th spot. But with all the like portability and being able to stretch his years out to play next to other superstars, that was very valuable as well. I think him and my 7, I believe, or 8. I have these 2 guys mixed up, but I think both of those guys showed that really well throughout their years as well, to be able to have that longevity and play next to other superstars and really contribute to championship level teams. So that's why I have Ray Allen where I had him.
Yeah, for me, I have nothing to add. Mars literally basically just stole everything else. Yeah, I agree with everything Mars and John D just said, basically. Again, I have him 1 spot below Reggie, and that's simply like the peak for peak. I think you could go back and forth, same tier. Reggie gets a couple more extra prime years in my opinion over Ray, so that's literally it. But I do like Ray going to Boston and then proving he could be a capable defender. To me is a big thing. Like he takes a step back offensively because he's no longer a number 1, and then he like is now your kind of go-to man defender in that starting lineup against wings. I do think Ray Allen, really, really good player. To me, number 6.
Yeah, and I'll just say, one of the greatest shooters of all time, obviously top tier shooting. So then, if I compare him to the other top shooters at shooting guard, Reggie Miller, Klay Thompson, Ray Allen at his peak was just a more well-rounded scorer, able to create for himself much better, much more athletic. Just a tremendously stable base. I mean, if you remember Ray Allen in his primes, his calves were like the most impressive calves in the NBA. I mean, he had such a sturdy foundation, athleticism, quick twitch, able to create for himself. Again, the defense mediocre. But as far as what you want to have a scoring guard, score from anywhere on the court, Ray Allen was pretty much prototypical, long enough career, and just as good a shooter as anyone else with some more offense tossed in on top. That's why I ranked him ahead of the other great shooters.
Shout out to Ray Allen. He comes in at 7th with 53 points. We are now moving on. This is joint 5th. This is the other tiebreaker we have. And it is a major jump from Ray Allen's 53 points. We are now up to 81. So this was a big leap in terms of the tier. If you want to view it as a tier, you got T-Mac, Reggie, Gervin, and Ray all separated by about 14 points, 53 to 39. And then we jump up here to 81 points. I think one of these players is the first player we have where everyone had them on the list. Yes. Oh, no. KB letting the team down. 17 of the 18 people had one of these guys. And then 16 of the 18 people had the other. So pretty much on everyone's list, but a couple people left them off. It's quicker for me to just say who left them off. KB left the one guy off, and Pirate and Real Talk left off the other guy. These players are Allen Iverson and Clyde Drexler. They come in joint 5th with 81 points. I had Allen Iverson in 8th. John D had him in 6th. Tyler, you had him in 9th. And then Pirate did not have him on the list. I think we'll start with John D because you had him the highest of all of us. Talk to us about Allen Iverson. John D.
I think in Ray Allen's like 6er years, I think having the ability to I said Ray Allen, my bad.
Yes,
anyway, I think in Allen Iverson's 6er years, the ability to get up as much shots as he did, I think is really valuable, because I don't know if you guys seen over the past few days, I've been arguing with people saying that shot chucking is always a bad thing. They've been talking about a certain guy that I have a near
who may be on this list. Spoiler alert, may be on this list.
May my ass. But I think that is very valuable. I think at his height, the ability to get up as much shots as he did per game and to make as much difficult shots as he did make, I think was very valuable. There are some pushbacks to where like how much he had to change like his jumper, for example, to really shoot over lengthier defenders, how much he had to work off the ball and on the ball to create really good shots. But I do think I with Allen Iverson just having the ability to get up as much shots as he did was very valuable. Now, you could say, like, when he did go to a more favorable offense in Denver, he didn't necessarily thrive because the playmaking that you would assume would be there when he got to Denver just was not there. It looks like he brought a lot of his 76er tendencies with him to Denver, so I could definitely understand that and why some of you guys may have him lower on the list. But I did really value the ability to be able to consistently put up shots throughout a game, because I just don't think a lot of people realize how hard that may be to do, just to be able to get up as much shots as he did at that height consistently with an offense that did not have as much ability around him. So I did value that.
Yeah, I think Iverson's probably one of the one or two hardest players to evaluate, because it's always like, how much of the tendencies were due to the lack of offensive talent? What could he have done on a higher level team? Like, he does get to Denver, and obviously some of the tendencies are still there, but that is like, 08 is by far his most efficient season as a scorer. He's like 3% ahead of league average efficiency after a Philly career where he's like average or below average almost every year. Iverson's a really weird player. I do think the volume creation has a ton of value, not even just for himself, but for others too. Like, you're basically guaranteeing like 30 points and 7 assists in a lot of these years. And that just has so much value. He's the one guy I was talking about earlier where, like, he does get a boost for being able to play 46 minutes a game and still have a motor at the end of games. Like, you basically don't, like, you can't look at plus minus numbers for a guy like Iverson because there's no off minutes. Like, the guy is just always on the court. So, like, there's no replacement. So I do think he's one of those guys that gets shafted when you look at like on off, and it's like, well, the off is 2 minutes a game. There's not really much you can draw from that and come to a good conclusion. I think Iverson's a weird player to evaluate, like I said. Actually, the efficiency is super interesting because if you look at synergy, his like points per possession on isolations and pick and rolls is consistently in like the 90 to 95th percentile among all players in the league, which is like, it's a drawback and it's a benefit, because it's like, okay, when this guy's creating offense, he is as efficient as anyone in the league. Like, his efficiency in isolation is like Kobe, T-Mac, LeBron, all these guys. The problem is he doesn't have any of the easy play types to boost his efficiency, and I think some of that is the limitations in his game. Like, he's so undersized, so you're not going to get the cutting and finishing that you get with like a T-Mac, for example. He wasn't a good jump shooter. I think that somewhat gets lost. Like, he's shooting like 36% from mid-range and like 31% from three. So yes, he's taking a lot of jumpers and it looks good, but it's not an efficient shot. So basically the only thing driving his efficiency forward was that he could generate a lot of shots at the rim. So even if he was below average at the rim, he could get there a lot because he was so quick, because he had such a good handle. The other thing is that he got to the line a ton. And that was basically the only thing really driving forward his efficiency, was that he's going to give you like 11 or 12 free throws and he'll make those. So Iverson's a weird player. I think the volume creation has a ton of value. But the reason I place him below like a Ray Allen or a Reggie Miller is simply, I think if you're trying to build a championship level team, yes, I do think Iverson can drag worse rosters to higher levels because of the volume creation. But I think if I'm trying to put together a championship team and I need like to just build the most seamless fit, Iverson to me feels like a harder player to play next to another point guard or another high level scorer or a great big. Like, Iverson to me has to have a team catered more towards him as opposed to a Ray Allen or Reggie Miller, who's like, we have a system, we're going to plug you in and you're going to give us hyper efficient shooting.
Yeah, Iverson is a tough one for me to evaluate. I've got higher on him over the years. I used to be a lot lower on him. I think being efficient at inefficient play types has its value, and I was going to bring that up. So we are seemingly on the same wavelength. That at the end of the day, when it comes to a lot of half-court offense, a lot of it does start out of ball screens or isolation, especially in that era. So Allen Iverson being able to be uber effective in those situations does drag up the floor of a team's offense. That's what he does. But when it comes down to the malleability, the portability, when you have someone else who can run those type of play types, what does Iverson do to complement those guys? Yeah, it gets a bit shaky. He did work off the ball a lot to create his pick and rolls, to create his isolations, and that was valuable, constantly moving, constantly active. But like Tyler said, the outside shooting left a lot to be desired. He was just limited as a finisher because of the size albeit he was relentless getting down there and got to the free throw line. And his finishing numbers are better than I think people would think based on his size. So he was a good finisher, but there are still limitations there, of course. And then defensively, that was the player I was alluding to compared to George Gervin.
Yeah.
Was not very good.
I will
played
say,
really good in the passing lanes, but
I was gonna say one thing I will say about Iverson's defense, and I think he's the ultimate guy that's so dependent on the team around him. Like if Iverson's on a bad team defense, he's an awful defender, like just a very, very bad defender. But because he was on an elite defense, there is a place for like the ability to jump lanes and create 2 or 3 steals because you always have insulation behind you. So if Iverson gambled on the 0-1 Sixers, Mutombo's still there. But if he gambles on the 25 Nuggets, now it's Jokic protecting the rim. It's not as great. But I think Iverson, like 0-1, 0-2, like some of the defensive number, like plus minus stuff, doesn't look too bad for him.
I also think, and this is where the relative to error stuff helps him. If Allen Iverson did a lot of the same gambling stuff he did on defense today, I think it would be more detrimental because of what it would be giving up. It would be giving up layups, dunks, and threes. Whereas back in the early 2000s, his gambles that didn't pay off often led to just mid-range jumpers. So like the trade-off was either Iverson gets the steal and gets a fast break, easy layup, 2 points, or we give up a 42% mid-range jump shot. The trade-off was just worth it for Allen Iverson to gamble routinely because of what he was getting back. So he didn't bleed as much value as I think he would in today's game. But I do think all of the limitations that I alluded to is what led to me having him at 8. And I probably should have had George Gervin above him. So I probably would lean closer towards 9 in hindsight. So sorry, George. But he did fall in 8th. And then Pirate, the first time I met you was you slandering Allen Iverson's name.
This is how our friendship started.
Yeah, you slandering Allen Iverson's name.
I don't believe it's slander.
You didn't have him in the top 10 today. So just enlighten the people. What are you hesitant about?
Allen Iverson is not a shooting guard. I'm going to put it on my tombstone. Allen Iverson was not a shooting guard. Well, he's 6 foot tall. He's 170 pounds. He can't shoot. He can't defend the position. He's not a shooting guard. And again, this doesn't mean I hate Allen Iverson. I loved Allen Iverson's career. I loved watching Allen Iverson games, but he was extremely misused his entire NBA career. And that's also not to say that his career wasn't impressive. It's extremely impressive to be a little 6 foot skinny guy and step onto the NBA and lead the NBA in scoring. That's very impressive to do as a human being. It doesn't mean it's productive. It doesn't mean that like what he's doing game in, game out is a winning formula for his team. So I don't know how else to put it. I mean, some people just don't understand my position on this. Allen Iverson was one of the most talented players to play in the NBA, but just extremely misutilized. If Allen Iverson had spent his career playing center, I would say the same thing. It's like, oh, it looks like he could have been a pretty good point guard, but that's not how he played. That's not how he was utilized. And how he was utilized, I personally don't have much use for a 6 foot tall guy shooting 38%, cannot defend the position, just does not have the physical ability to defend the position. And then you're telling me, he's able to get to the rim. Well, he is, but it's not like he's extremely efficient at the rim. And so now you got your little 6 foot tall shooting guard underneath the basket, missing a shot. That's not going to be good for your transition defense. I mean, I feel like his career showed it. Look, if you take the finals run out of his career, he was a losing player for his career. He lost more games than he won for a reason. But he's just not a shooing guard. I cannot put him on a top 10 list of shooting guards.
I think a lot of what you're saying has merit. And I actually think, to your point, to me, very clearly, the 2 best offensive years of his career are 05 and 06 when he finally is a point guard. He's a point guard in 05 and 06, and he gets up to like 7.5 assists a game. And those are his most efficient scoring seasons on the Sixers. I do agree with the point that he probably should have been a point guard. And I also think like it does suck that we never got to see him in like a fast-paced, like pace and space kind of offense. Like I do wonder what Iverson's career looks like if he gets like Mike D'Antoni in the Suns. Like, I do wonder how much different, and then he gets to run the show as the point guard.
Did you mean like instead of Nash or
instead of Nash? Yeah. Like
instead of Nash. Yeah.
I
think that would be
his pace and space.
I believe the when I look at a career, I feel like Kevin Johnson's career and play style would have been
that's a good
the best outcome, the best result for an Allen Iverson type of player.
So not a top 10 point guard either.
Well, no, but I think he may have been able to play that role better than Kevin Johnson over the course of his career. But that mold,
Iverson is
that mold of play.
Such a fascinating. I actually will come out and say, as a kid, Allen Iverson was my first GOAT. I thought Allen Iverson was the GOAT.
We all loved Allen Iverson. I remember one time, Mars, we were on Players' Choice talking about this, and someone in the chat, I think it was Greatest, he was like, you're racist. You don't like Allen Iverson for his cornrows and his tattoos. You want him to be like a button-down John Stockton. And like, are you kidding me? At first, I got more tattoos than anyone on on the panel. And I mean, I'd be a bigger fan. I think I got more than Knox.
I only got 4.
I'd be a bigger fan of John Stockton if he had cornrows and tattoos. Like we all loved Allen Iverson. It was the age of like and one. Like that would have been awesome. I'd bump John Stockton up a bit. But no, I mean I love the aesthetics, the tattoos, the attitude, the will, the hunger, the desire, all those intangible stuff. But just at the end of the day, he physically was not able to perform that function.
I do think one thing I will say that I really value with AI is that I do think he actually is like one of the GOAT motors, like with KG, Jordan. I think AI's motor just never stopped. And that's so impressive to me, playing 44, 45, 46 minutes per game, to just always have that level of effort. And then obviously like the gambling on defense is concerning sometimes, but that still takes effort. Like it takes energy to consistently jump passing lanes and things like that. So I do think AI, like, just the effort he gave on every possession does go a long way when we're trying to like split hairs between these great players.
Yeah, but just on defense, I would say, there are only so many passing lanes you can jump as opposed to just being able to stand in front of the opposing 6'6" shooting.
Definitely.
Guard, right? And play defense, play in, play out. So
agreed.
Before we move on to Clyde Drexler, I just want to say where everyone had AI. I had him 8th. John D had him 6th. Low had him 5th. ZZ had him 5th. Tyler, you had him 9th. Chill had him 5th. Real Talk did not have him. Ox had him 6th. Ron had him 4th. KB had him 5th. Pirate obviously did not have him. Gifted had him 5th. Penn had him 8th. Riv had him 5th. Dream had him 9th. Swiper had him 5th. Jordan had him 3rd. And Sean had him 7th. I wanted to have Jordan on the show today, but he obviously couldn't make it. I wanted to hear him talk about Allen Iverson a little bit, but the stars didn't align. But anyway, Clyde Drexler, he was tied with Allen Iverson. I had him one spot above Allen Iverson. I had him at 7th. John D had him at 7th. Low had him at 6th. ZZ had him at 8th. Tyler, you had him at 7th. Chill had him at 4th. Real Talk had him at 5th. Ox had him at 4th. Ron had him in 8th. KB did not have him. Pirate, you had him at 6th. Gifted had him at 7th. Penn had him at 5th. Riv, Dream, and Swiper all had him at 6th. Jordan had him in 9th. And Sean had him in 5th. So, let's start with John D. John D, talk to me about Clyde Drexler and why you had him in 7th.
I think Clyde Drexler, once again, the longevity with him and like Ray Allen were some of my biggest pushers, especially how he was able to play in Houston next to Hakeem. I think he was very valuable in his off-ball role. I think he was a really good off-ball player in Portland as well, and he was one of the better transition players and athletes in the league. Like nobody talks about his above the rim finishing, especially as a dunker, like in transition and how athletic he was. I think he was a solid shooter, and I definitely think he was a good passer too. Like I would say he was probably a better passer than Allen. And I think he contributed to like some of the Portland teams, and I think he was really good off the ball. I think Klay was really good, but I couldn't put him any higher than where I had him. I just favored Allen Iverson a little bit more.
What's going next?
Take it. Yeah, I don't really have too much to add on Clyde. I think it seems to me like Clyde was the least like disputed guy so far on this list. Like everyone seemed to have him like 5 to 7, and then someone had him 9th. Everyone kind of seems very consistent with Clyde and is just acknowledging like really good two-way player. Super slept on before he ever entered his prime. Year 3, averaged 8 assists per game. He was in like kind of a hybrid point guard role that year. Kind of showed what he can do on the ball, but obviously he plays next to Terry Porter might be the most underrated player ever. That guy was a freaking animal. Playing next to Terry Porter all those years as an off-ball slasher wing, connective passer, do-it-all defensive player who could get above the rim and protect the rim, jump lanes, gives you like 2.5, 3 steals for like 6 years in a row. Clyde, just really nice two-way wing, never did provide that like hyper efficient playoff scoring that we get with some of these other shooting guards. And to me, that's the only thing holding him back from being like a real candidate for me for like 3 or 4. I think other guys were just better volume efficient on ball scorers. But yeah, Clyde's like, if you're building a team, you want Clyde. You want a guy like Clyde, man.
Yeah, I mean, Clyde is just he's, prototypical vanilla, I'd say. Clyde's not one of the best at pretty much anything, but when you think of a shooting guard, he's, B+, A-, just across the board, scoring inside, outside, good playmaker, rebounder, just good floor game, across the board, decent shooter. Again, like not an A+ at anything, but it really, he was playing across from Mike, and all those years, I felt like, Clyde, he's got a prototypical physique, 6'7". He's just like, a discount Michael Jordan. He's a little bit worse at everything, but not really bad at anything. I wouldn't say there was like any real glaring weakness in Clyde's game. He wasn't an exceptional defender, but he wasn't a liability. What I wouldn't quite call him a two-way player, but his defense was adequate, and his offense was pretty much just, textbook 22, 24 point scoring, good efficiency, a real level-headed guy, just kind of mature, seemed like a good teammate, a shooting guard you would want on your team, and good longevity. So yeah, Clyde, the great boring shooting guard of NBA history, I would say. The least descript, the most nondescript great shooting guard.
Yeah,
I just realized.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I didn't want to cut you off, but I just realized 89 Clyde averaged 4 offensive rebounds per game. That's
why I wanted to talk.
That's the thing. He could do pretty much anything.
4 offensive rebounds is crazy.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the offensive rebounding because that was the most fascinating thing. Just in general, he was a really good rebounder as a 2-guard. Mm-hmm. You guys were a bit higher on the defense than me. I think he's probably just closer to average. Well, not pirate, but he's just some good passing lane stuff. Could make some plays at the rim. Not the greatest off-ball defender in terms of just consistently being in the right place at the right time. Not the greatest man defender, but really good offensively in transition. To John D's point. The handle was
I mean, it was pretty adequate for the positions that he would find himself on the floor, though.
It never really held him back from, like, he had a straight line drive. He did have a counter. If you were able to cut him off, he could still get back to the rim. That was something he was capable of.
Yeah,
he was a capable outside shooter. He was a really good passer, really good feel for laydowns, especially out of his drives, being able to just find a connection with his big. So really good longevity. Yeah, no, any Clyde Drexler stands out there. I apologize, but he is kind of just like the most bog standard. Yeah, he's a top 10 shooting guard ever. Clyde Drexler. There's not much leeway. There's not many people vehemently disagreeing. Everyone has him kind of in the same range. I think 4 is a bit of a reach, but I understand.
Well, and again, he was the guy. He was the guy weighted with. He had to play his career directly across from Michael Jordan. So, like,
that's always
Clyde Drexler was never able to escape that large shadow of Michael Jordan his whole career. Because no matter how good Clyde Drexler is going to be, it's like, well, it's just not quite your time.
And we'll find out if Michael Jordan makes this list. Stay tuned. We are moving into the top 4. There is another sizable jump here. We had AI and Drexler tied for 5th with 81 points. In 4th place, we do have someone with 113 points. So a big jump. I had this guy in 3rd. John D had him in 4th. Low had him in 4th. ZZ had him in 4th. Tyler had him in 3rd. Chill had him in 6th. 1, 2, 3, 4. Chill had him in 6th. Real Talk had him in 4th. Ox did not have him. Ron had Ron had him in 7th. KB had him in 4th. Pirate, you had him in 5th. Gifted had him in 4th. Penn had him in 6th. Riv, Dream, Swiper, Jordan, and Sean all had him in 4th. So pretty unanimously 4th. We are talking
or not on the list.
I should have got Ox on for today. James Harden is the man in 4th. I'm gonna start with Tyler because you had him 3rd alongside me. So talk to the people about James Harden.
Yeah, I need to preface this by saying, peak for peak, I do think Wade is noticeably better than Harden. So I don't want this to be I think James Harden's better than Dwyane Wade conversation.
Noticeably was unnecessary, but
noticeably better peak. I think 09 Wade was a pretty ridiculous peak, but my argument would be Harden sustained an Iron Man level run like throughout like 12 years where you just knew you were getting ridiculously good offense for like a decade plus. Wade's prime was a lot more short-lived. Like he emerged right away. By 05, he's already like probably getting MVP votes. 06, he obviously leads the team to a championship. But by like 2012, he's a fraction of the player he was in 05. And then 13, 14, you kind of just get these years where he's like next to LeBron, but kind of a shell of himself. I think Harden just had a much more consistent high-level prime. The thing with Harden, though, that is just like, we talked about it with Iverson. The volume offensive creation was off the charts, but Harden was hyper efficient with it. Like getting to the line, shooting 12 threes a game and making 37% of them. You knew you were getting just what you were getting with Harden. It was like I always like to reference the meme where his over under was like 42.5 points and he hit in the 3rd quarter. And it's like, that was just the most unfathomable. You knew what you were getting with Harden every night. And I think he gets shafted in the playoffs because he gets held to the standard that he set for himself in the regular season. Like if you just take Harden's playoff numbers at face value, you get like 31 or 32 points a game, 6 or 7 assists, efficient results, a high-level playoff offense from the Rockets, and then they just lose to a better team. And it's like, well, he didn't put up the 36 he did in the regular season. Yes, fair. Totally fair. But James Harden just at his peak, especially like I think actually his peak was the 2020 bubble. Like I think that was the best version of Harden ever, 2020. There was basically nothing he couldn't do offensively with the ball in his hands. And then off ball, yes, he's not going to be moving around. He's not going to be a high level cutter, but at the very least, like you can expect him to make like 39 or 40% of his catch and shoot threes, make the right extra passes. So you organize an offense around him. You get him a guy like Chris Paul to play like yin and yang with. And I think James Harden was just one of the best players ever.
I was
go ahead.
Okay. I was just watching James Harden put 45 on the Celtics in game 1 without Embiid. Truly a fun game to watch. But James Harden is, in my opinion, the greatest or one of the greatest isolation players the league has ever seen. The ability to take a lot of threes off the bounce. Like if you look at some of his numbers, he was taking like 11 to 12 pull-up threes off the dribble, in isolation, the step backs, off the dribble, out of crossovers. He was really good in pick and roll. He led a top tier offense, the best offense in the league during the Golden State Warriors era, which I think was very impressive. And I think he was like one of the driving factors of the 3-point era, because like I think the Rockets really like pushed it like the Warriors did, just to have like more 3-point shooting and really prioritize 3-point shooting as much as they did with guys like PJ Tucker and Trevor Ariza. I think they had Rocco in 2020 as well. But he was one of the best offensive players in his era, in my opinion. And I think it was undoubtable. I think he had a really high like free throw frequency, just getting to the rim, being able to lock guys on his hip and get to the free throw line, the ability to have guys leave their positioning really early. The first step was always really good. And I always thought like you had to guard James Harden, like you couldn't force him left and you couldn't force him right because he had a really good first step either way. So you had to like really maintain a stance like right in front of him because either way he would beat you. He was a really good lob passer, really good kick out passer, really good pocket passer as well, especially with his two-man game with Clint Capella. He made Clint Capella look, in my opinion, way better than what he was. Clint Capella was really good, but I wouldn't even say really good. He was a good player, but I think he made Clint Capella look way better than what he was. And James Harden, he even now, like I still think James Harden is one of the better league guards in the game. Like I would still think he's a top 10 player. In Brooklyn, I think he was their second best player, even though Kyrie had that hell of a year. But I would still say Harden was their second best player. I think him and Embiid had one of the best two-man games in the league in 23. Yeah, Harden's great.
Yeah, I want to preface with saying I also think peak Dwyane Wade is better. Don't agree with noticeably.
Noticeably.
No. He's better. He can have it. But yeah, I think the longevity is what is why I'm at the point where I think James Harden just cumulatively would be the higher ranking player for me. I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I think by the time his last year in OKC, I think he was already the second best player on the team. Like that's my hot take, I guess. Love Russell Westbrook, but I do think James Harden by that point was the second best player on that team. Just really good playmaker, had some of the craft out of pick and roll, really good shooter, could play off the ball. And defensively, he wasn't too bad back then, contrary to popular belief. And then once you get to Houston, we're looking at one of the great offensive engines we've ever seen. There was a stretch of years where you could say from 2017 to 19, 20-ish, James Harden was the best regular season player in the league. You could say that. I think fairly, like you could say just over the course of regular seasons, he was the best player. Now, obviously, to Tyler's point, he is a playoff dropper. I'm not here to deny that. I know I've taken up for James Harden before, but he is a playoff dropper. Now, dropping from all-time great standards doesn't mean you aren't still playing great. And I think that's where the disconnect seems to come. I think James Harden still plays well in the playoffs. Just he doesn't play to the same regular season standards, which is a negative. Ideally, you want someone to play up and above those levels. But when you have levels that high, it's kind of hard to replicate that. Not many people in playoff rises to that degree. My biggest issue with James Harden is, and the reason I think he is as much of a playoff dropper as he has been, is A, the in-between game that he just went away from with the rise of analytics. And B, I just think his style of play lends itself to, I don't know how to describe it because this is the first time I'm really formulating this opinion. James Harden had a lot of designed reads, if that makes sense. It was, if the trap comes, I'm going to let the trap come all the way, and then I'm going to hit the pocket. You guys are going to play 4-on-3, whatever. If we're playing pick and roll and we switch, we're going to get to the isolation. If you show me, if you don't give up the drive, step back 3. If you do, I'm going by you. One of the quickest first steps I've ever seen by someone that size, by the way, ridiculous. If we're playing pick and roll and you step up, I got the pocket pass. If you drive and the big helps, I got the lob, blah, blah, blah. All of his actions were preconceived. It was defense does this is what I'm going to do. And I think as you get further into playoff series, teams start to adjust. And I don't think James Harden, I think that's what separated him from Dwyane Wade. Dwyane Wade was just different in the way he could attack a defense. And it was harder to take away because Dwyane Wade didn't have preconceived reads. It was read and react. Whereas James Harden is, okay, you do this, I'm going to do this. And once you get to game 6, game 7 of a series, teams kind of know what to look for. And James Harden didn't have the counters to attack that away like a guy like D-Wade did. That's my theory. I don't know if that's actually the reality, but that's how I feel about it.
Can I piggyback off that by saying, like, the other thing with Harden is that he never really like got out of his comfort zone with those reads and kind of forced the issue. And I guess that's like one thing I'm sure Pirate will bring this up too, is like, compared to all these other guys we've talked about, it does feel like Harden's playoff motor just wasn't like, it didn't, I think obviously this is kind of cheap to just use this year, but like the Clippers Nuggets series, towards the end of that series, it felt like Harden was playing, like if you just watched Harden and no one else, it felt like a January game. there was no sense of urgency that while they were like on the verge of being eliminated, and he just kept like playing in his comfort zone. That's the one drawback I kind of have with Harden, and kind of one of the big things that separates him from Wade is like Wade would get into these playoff series against these juggernaut Boston defenses or whatever. And it's like, I'm going to slash, force the issue. You never know where I'm going to come from or how I'm going to get 2 feet in the paint. Whereas Harden, like you said, has those like preconceived reads. And he was very much just like kind of playing within his comfort zone in a lot of those games.
That game 7 this year was an embarrassment from James Harden. Just got put out. That was terrible. But anyway, yeah, I think Dwyane Wade is the better player. I just favor the longevity advantage that James Harden has to where I would put him above Dwyane Wade. But I have no issue 3 and 4 here. I think these guys are clearly 3 and 4. I have no issue whichever order you go with. I think it does depend on what you value. In fact, I think Dwyane Wade being 3 is probably the right answer, even though I had James Harden 3. Parrot, is there anything you want to say about James Harden?
Yeah, I mean, just to play off what you said, it's the word for Harden for me has always been formulaic. Him and especially in Houston, like you said, pre-designed offense, kind of for me, kind of soulless. Where like I'm a big fan of the 70s, people running around, loosey goosey, adjusting their shot for the defender in front of them. You don't know what the next play is going to be. Where Houston was, I mean, they had that strict offense that they stuck to. So Harden in particular, like I'm not the biggest Harden fan. And his play style isn't really what I would put at shooting guard. But at the same time, I can't deny just his prolific, creative offensive ability, not only to create for himself and score at a very high volume on good enough clips most of the time, but also just on the offensive side, a very good floor game in general. Real good playmaker, real good passer, good rebounder. Defensively, again, not quite the physique I want at shooting guard, a bit roly-poly, so he's carrying that weight, which can contribute to kind of melting down later in the season, later in games, and also make you not the, most spry defender on the wing, to put it generously. I mean, really not able to defend the position very well.
Yeah, when you're a better post defender than a man defender, and you're 6'5" as a 2 guards, there's probably some issues there. But
he liked his
anyway. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, on to number 3. James Harden had 113 points. We know who number 3 is. It's no spoiler. It's Dwyane Wade. He had 139 points. Everyone pretty much had him at 3. There's no need to say. If you heard me say that people had James Harden at 4, they had Dwyane Wade at 3. The only exception to that is Jordan, who decided to have Dwyane Wade at 5. But
wow,
other than that, Dwyane Wade was the number 3. We did kind of speak about Dwyane Wade, but John D, I'm gonna go to you. Just talk about Dwyane Wade, because you had him at 3. So talk about Dwyane Wade.
I think with Dwyane Wade, the ability to get to the free throw line, play out of pick and roll, play in transition, and the relentless rim pressure that he put on the rim. Like, we can always talk about, like, in the playoffs, how he got to the free throw line continuously and consistently. I don't think he was the shooter James Harden was, but I do think he was the better defender. Like, nobody talks about how good of a passer and defender D Wade was. And I could definitely understand saying like D Wade's prime wasn't as long as James Harden's, but I do think like 2009 D Wade, we talked about this on the panel a few days back. He was a special player. I think Dwyane Wade was really good in pick and roll, really, I would say inconsistent in the mid-range, but there are nights that they're like he could be really good in the mid-range, and there are some nights where it just looks like it wasn't going for him. But the touch around the rim was great. The athleticism, the finishing was always there. The over-the-top finishing was always there. He was always a really good on-ball defender, in my opinion. He was a good off-ball defender as well. So I think just in the playoffs as a defender, I would take him over Harden, and just the ability to maintain his level throughout the regular season to postseason is what really was the deciding factor for me.
I think Wade is one of a few guys in NBA history. It's a short list who are truly scheme proof. There's nothing you could do to keep him out of the paint. There was no defense during his prime from like 2006 to 2011. There was never a defense we saw that was able to keep him out of the paint. And the best way I like to describe Dwyane Wade's driving game is like using two modern players. So with Shea, you have the change of pace, the slinkiness, the flexibility, the just weird angles he can get to, and just like the cutting back and forth. And then with Anthony Edwards, you have the explosiveness, the first step, the ability to just leave you in the dust. Dwyane Wade had the slinkiness, bendiness, flexibility of Shea with the explosiveness of Anthony Edwards. And when you put those two things together with good ball handling, you're left with a guy who could literally go band for band with anyone as a half court driver. Like if you think the GOAT driver is Michael Jordan, Dwyane Wade's right there. Dwyane Wade you could not keep him out of the paint. Just freak driver, had a nice enough mid-range game to complement that driving. Really good passer. The thing is like limited 3-point shooter to limited somewhat hurt his like efficiency as a scorer. You won't get like the hyper efficient scoring you get with some of these other high level shooters. And that also kind of limited his off-ball game. I do think he was a good cutter, good playing off off of other guys in transition. We saw it with LeBron, but now someone who can spot up and hit the three. And I think a good example of where that becomes a limiter is in 2013. Remember the finals? It was like, do we leave Mike Miller in the game or Dwyane Wade in the game? Because with Mike Miller in the game, LeBron gets to do his thing and he could play in the pace and space. And they actually kept Dwyane Wade off the floor to close out one of those games because Mike Miller's shooting was such a necessary thing. But I still think Dwyane Wade at his peak, like 09 Dwyane Wade, arguably a top 15 player ever, peak for peak, can go band for band with any shooting guard not named Michael Jordan, peak for peak. Like you said, John D, shorter prime by 2012. He's no longer an all-NBA level player after that. And I do think the injuries just put him below Harden when you go totality of the prime.
Pirate?
Well, I guess I'll say I had him above Harden, generally because of the two-way ability, the athleticism, two-way, the basically the same traits you'll see in the top three for me: Jordan, Kobe, and then Wade.
Holy spoiler! Damn.
Well, I'm guessing maybe we'll see. Yeah. But no, I think that's important. The ability to guard the position combined with the high volume, high efficiency scoring. Not a great shooter, but great shot selection. So if you're not a great shooter, hey, all you got to do is not take a lot of those shots that you're not good at. And that's going to make you a much better basketball player in the long run. So Wade, more in that shooting guard / point guard mold, great dribbling, great playmaking, to accent his high volume scoring ability to lead a team. I saw that Heat team with him and Shaq play, and it was one of the best games I had seen in person. He was a tremendous athlete, just intangibles, mentality, had his head on his shoulders, just a really mature guy. I think that shows up in a shot selection. He wasn't a knucklehead. Just being a knucklehead can really drop you down lists. There are a lot of really talented guys who play in the NBA. There's knuckleheads, and Wade wasn't. I was a little surprised to see that he only had 3 all defense. I thought he would have had more, but I feel like he definitely spent much more than 3 years as a top tier defender.
Teams, I think, is quite shaky. I'll just say that I think it's quite shaky. Yeah. But D-Wade, shaky. But he was my number 4. The longevity stuff. Overall, in his peak, we're looking like 09, 2011 for me. To Tyler's point, scheme proof. You couldn't keep him out the paint, and he knew you couldn't keep him out the paint. It wasn't someone was like, oh yeah, I got Vince Carter's athletic tools, but let me shoot 8 mid-range jumpers a game. That wasn't his mentality. It was, I'm gonna get 2 feet in the paint. I'm gonna play out a pick and roll, reject ball screens, and get to the baseline, and you're not gonna stop me. And if I get 2 feet in the paint, I have elite touch. I'm one of the best finishers of all time, whether that's right at the rim or in that floater range. Had an elite array of gathers. I like the comparison between Shea and Ant. I would throw some Donovan Mitchell in there with some of the gathers that he had going to the rim. Just a hybrid of like the best traits of all 3 of them. Really good passer, really good off the ball despite being an outside shooter. Just a really good feel for cutting into open space, good offensive rebounder. Just understanding that I don't need to shoot outside shots to be a threat on the court when I don't have the ball in my hands. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't seem to understand in the modern NBA in particular. Defensively, really, really good containing penetration, on the outside. Really good off-ball defender, provided legitimate rim protection at the 2 guard position, could rebound. There wasn't really many holes in his defensive game, especially once again in his prime. The issues that I had was even within his prime years, 05 to 2011, you got 2 years that get cut short by injuries in 07 and 08. So you're really looking at 05, 06, 09, 10, and 11, where you're getting this D Wade that you want to see. And it's like, do those years outweigh what I think James Harden gave me? And I want to say he was still a good player 2012, 13, 14. He was still a good player. But to get onto this list, those years would just not cut it. Like, quite frankly, it just wouldn't cut it. So that's why I had him 4th. But peak for peak, I would have him. We'll say 3rd. We'll say 3rd to stay safe. But amazing player.
Robert Carr said talk about his shot blocking. I think that just goes to, just his overall floor game on offense and defense, the scrappiness combined with athleticism.
Really good transition defender too.
Really so he's one of those players where when you're watching him play, whether offense, defense, the possessions go, like he's going to get involved in damn near every play, on offense and defense. He's just the kind of player, like every 30 seconds he's popping up, showing himself in the game, making a play. So
shout out to Dwyane Wade. That is our number 3 with 139 points. Now we are into the top 2, and these guys were unanimous. It was 1 and 2 in every single list. So just spoiler alert.
So no one had Kobe. Okay.
So it was we only had 18 people contribute to this list only. So first place had 180 points, and second place had 162 points. They were first and second on every list. It was unanimous. I wonder how many times that's going to happen over these weeks, but this is the one time it's happened thus far. We'll start with number 2. I'm going to go straight to John D because he's been very passionately arguing on Twitter for a long time. We have Kobe Bryant at number 2. John D, talk to me.
Man. Where do I begin? Kobe Bryant, man. To start off, I think when Kobe Bryant's on a heater, he's like one of the greatest players to watch. Like post fades, like deep fade threes, getting to the rim, sideline fadeaway jumpers. Like it's amazing. It's amazing. And there are people on Twitter that want to tell me he didn't play off the ball. That's the route to go with Kobe. That's the route. He doesn't play off the ball. I think Kobe Bryant as a scorer had all the counters that you could give to a defense. You want to take away the off-ball ability, I'm going to play in the pick and roll. I can also play out of the post. I'm one of the best guard post players in the league, just being able to overpower other guards, to have a up and under, to have a jump hook, to have a fadeaway, to be able to pass out of the post. He did that stuff in high school. He was a guy that was used to like be put in the middle of the zone, and he was used in the post to kind of like break the zone with the over-the-top shot making around the free throw line and to pass out of the post. So to be able to see that carry out through his NBA career, I think is very underrated. As a ball handler, I don't think he's one of the greatest ball handlers, but I do think he was still really good. I think he leaned a lot more on the craft to be able to slither through traffic and get to the rim consistently. He had a lot of counters at the rim, being able to finish over bigger defenders. As a playoff defender, I think he was great. Like, I think he was a really good playoff defender. I think it does rattle off towards his later years, but I do think throughout his earlier years as a playoff defender, he was really good on the ball. And the tough shot making. Like, a lot of people look at it with 05 to 07, like, yeah, he's a shot chucker. He's a shot chucker. In the fourth quarter, if you're leaning on a Kobe Bryant, who would you want him to give the ball to? Like, I'm not saying, yeah, take every shot over 4 or 5 defenders, but it's like, sometimes some Kobe jump shots that you may not think are great are still better than Smush Parker, like being able to get the ball and shoot consistently. So I think Kobe is starting to be underrated, and I think it's like an agenda push. And again, if nobody's fighting for Kobe, then I am no longer with you. I promise you. I promise you. Like, I don't understand it. Like, to sit here and lie to me and say he couldn't pass or play off the ball, I just don't agree with it. One of the better floor raisers the league has ever seen, especially in 06. When he wasn't on the floor, that team just could not generate offense. I don't care how you try to split it. They could not generate offense. Kobe's scoring was the main beneficiary of that offense, being able to score out of the post, off ball, get to the rim, and create easy shots for guys. In the pick and roll, especially when Pau Gasol got there, that was a really underrated 2-man game with how he was able to beat drop coverages with his pull-up mid-range shooting and his lob passing to Pau Gasol or pocket passing to Pau Gasol. The off-ball play he had while Pau Gasol was in the post was also valuable as well. Kobe was amazing. He was amazing, bro. And I promise you, I will not let Twitter disrespect him. I will not. Before I let y'all go, I did not realize how fun that was, by the way. Like Mars, I be like telling you, like I be seeing you arguing with everybody on Twitter about their takes. It's very fun. Like it's really fun to hear people's opinions.
I mean, I just be conversating. I wouldn't say I argue. I just conversate. People.
And by one last
although I'm blocked by a lot of people, so that's something I realized. Sometimes I'll be seeing Tyler's tweets and someone will respond to his tweet, and I'm like, damn, I can't even respond to that person because I'm blocked. Never seen them before in my life, and I'm blocked. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I said something.
I'm so glad I was able to like get out of the like debating with people on Twitter phase. I haven't argued with someone on Twitter in forever, but that used to be like I would waste so much time just going back and forth with people and never reaching a conclusion. I'm like, what am I? I had like a self-reflection. I was like, what am I doing, man?
Yeah, because it's not a real like conversation because you can't
so
change their opinion.
It's so addicting.
You can't change their opinion.
Yeah, I just say okay now. So when people say like something ridiculously stupid, I just say okay. Like you got it. There's no point in having a conversation. But I love Twitter, man. We've been on there for what month are we in? July. I joined on Christmas Day of last year. I remember it was the Wemby game against the Knicks.
Wemby game tweet.
I meant to tweet from my burner. I accidentally tweeted from my main. I was like, I'm on Twitter now. Okay, and I've been on Twitter
20 accounts deep at this point.
Yeah.
I got a few out there in the archives.
No, I'm saying mine are erased off the internet. I've had like 20 Hoop Venue accounts. I'm saying.
Oh wow. Okay.
They're all in the they're gone. They're in the void.
Shout out to the void. But anyway, Kobe Bryant, number 2. Unanimously number 2. Who wants to go next, Tyler? Pirate.
I've got nothing else to add. Like if this was go ahead, John D.
Real quick, I should have put Kobe at 1 because I knew I wasn't going to change the list just so I can show you, but it doesn't matter. And by the way, I do have to get out of here. I just wanted to get my Kobe love out my system for the day.
I'm gonna stick around from MJ.
Shout out to MJ. I do get a lot of slack for being in Chicago and not thinking he's the GOAT, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that's right. Jesus.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, we're getting to the GOAT list in 4 weeks.
All right,
damn.
I'll be forgetting about that. But once again, it was always a pleasure talking basketball with you all. I will see you guys again in a week. Mars, Anyway, see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you, John.
Good to see you guys, man.
Hey, man, I'll get back to you on Twitter.
I bet.
There you go. Okay, it is now the 3 of us. Let's talk about Kobe Bryant a little bit and then get into Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I have nothing to add with Kobe, so I'll let Pirate take the floor. I was just gonna say, if it was an all-time conversation, I'd do some back and forth. But for shooting guard purposes, 1 and 2 are so set in stone to me. I don't really need to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like John D said, he thinks Kobe is underrated. I would have a hard time really believing that. I mean, outside of a guy named Michael Jordan, I think the whole world pretty much has him consensus the second best shooting guard that's ever played.
I'll be on Twitter a little bit too much. I'll be on Twitter a little bit too much.
But I mean,
seeing my fair share of some names I don't agree with.
He's textbook. He's exactly what you want to draw from a shooting guard. 6'7", more than enough athleticism, scoring machine, great on defense, easily defends his position. I really think Kobe might be, if he is underrated at all, I'd say he's maybe a little overrated on offense, maybe a little underrated on defense. That would be maybe my idea of it. But I mean, he's an A-level player on offense and defense for an extended period, which very few players in history can say. So, and he had the luxury, I guess, coming off Michael Jordan to really study, hone in his game. I don't know if Kobe would have been Kobe if Kobe came before Michael Jordan. But
maybe, I don't know. I'm lower on Kobe's defense, I guess, comparatively. Yes.
I think to his offense in relation to his offense.
In relation to his offense, in relation to what Basketball Reference says about his defense, in relation to how some people talk about his defense, I guess I'm lower than that consensus. But I think the peak of Kobe on defense was talking 99, 2000s, really high on that version of Kobe. Now, how long I saw that version was not very long. And I think that's why I'm ultimately lower. Like, we're talking like 04, 05, 06, 07. not very high on that version of Kobe's defense. And yeah, he was rattling off 4 all defensive teams in those 5 years. So it comes and goes how I feel about Kobe's defense. Depends who I'm talking to, really. And then offensively, I think he gets probably rated accurately in terms of like, oh, he's the X-rated offensive player. But in terms of like his actual offensive skill set, I think his on-ball isolation stuff gets overrated. And then the off-ball playmaking, all of that stuff gets drastically underrated.
I think the playmaking gets underrated.
Absolutely. I
think there was that one stretch where he was kind of playing pseudo point guard for like a good 20, 25 games. I think Kobe definitely could have played. I think he can play the point guard position to a very high level, you know, if that's what you were looking to do with Kobe.
Very, very smart player, just very geared towards scoring, and that's not a problem, just tendencies. But yeah, just very I think he's great. I think he's quite clearly the second best 2 guard though. I'm not listening to an argument that he's one because he's more skilled than Michael Jordan. I get it. In fact, I probably agree with the statement that he's more skilled. He can do more things. Like, I agree. Like, he's a better ball handler. He's a better outside shooter from 3. Like, I agree, but he wasn't better than Michael Jordan. So that's right. That's all I have to really say. We are on to number 1, the greatest shooting guard of all time. Wasn't really a question. Everyone had him at number 1. If I asked everyone, I'm sure they would have said they wrote in MJ quite quickly. It wasn't really a question. We are obviously talking about Michael Jordan. Tyler, why don't you start us off? What led you to thinking Michael Jordan was slightly the greatest shooting guard of all time?
Again, not much to add here because I feel it pretty obvious. In my opinion, pretty clearly the GOAT scorer. The volume he was hitting in the playoffs is unfathomable. I actually had a tweet about that like a week ago, where you look at the scoring numbers from those playoff runs and all of the all-time greats. When you go to these multi-year playoff stretches, it's like they're going to give you 30, 31, 32 points a game on good efficiency, like really good efficiency. And then on all these lists, it's like MJ 35, 36, 34 points per game. And it's just like that extra 4 or 5 points every single year is just insane. He generates so much pressure as a slasher, such an elite mid-range scorer, had an elite post game. Really, really good passer, one of the best playmakers ever. That just kind of gets, I think that gets criminally underrated. GOAT for the argument for the GOAT offensive player, one of the greatest defensive guards ever. It's just pretty self-explanatory. I don't really think. I think here's my best way of describing Michael Jordan's career. I think you could make an argument that 88, 89, 90, 91, and 92 MJ, those 5 years, I think you can make an argument separately for any one of them being the greatest player to ever step foot on a court. Like any version of that stretch of MJ. So it's pretty, like, I don't really think anyone, especially just as a shooting guard, like, I don't think you can really stack anyone up against that.
I agree. There's really not much to say. Like, it was quite self-explanatory. The greatest scorer of all time. Definitely agree with that statement. The volume, the ability to get to the rim. One of the most ridiculous athletes I've ever seen. Once he added the mid-range game and then he added the post game, it was like, there's nothing you can do with this man, like, at all. Really, really good passer, a really willing passer, especially once you get to like the early 90s, became a really willing passer. Someone who utilized the jump pass a lot. And I know like that seems like a cardinal sin, but when you can hang in the air for 7 years, you can jump pass. Like, go ahead and jump pass. You just don't seem to hit the ground. So really good in that regard. Defensively, I know some people think he's a bit overrated. I don't subscribe to he should have been the defensive player. I don't think he was a defensive player of the year level defender, but he still was at the time. We're looking late 80s, early 90s, the best defender at his position in the sport. In terms of his rim protection, the off-ball stuff, he was still a very capable man defender. Like, he was an elite defensive player and then the best offensive player in the sport. Now, I guess my one not pushback, he's still number 1 regardless of what I'm about to say. I am lower on second 3P MJ just in general. Like, not just he's not as good as first 3P or late 80s Jordan, just comparatively to, like, if Michael Jordan was second 3P MJ for most of his career, I could convince myself that he's number 2 on this list. Ooh. That's where I'm at. I think Kobe Bryant, peak Kobe, you get to a peak D Wade, peak Kobe, peak D Wade, 03 T-Mac. I could convince myself that those small samples of those players So we're looking like
you're knocking
a
MJ
3-year
down like sixth.
Yeah, what I'm saying is
If he had just been
those 3 years of MJ, so 96,
Yeah.
97, 98, compared to the best 3 years of Kobe, 06, 07, 08, in my opinion, the best 3 years of Wade, 09, 10, 11, the best 3 years, James Harden, maybe the love stops after those two. I could convince myself that second 3P MJ is the third on that list. I could convince myself of that. But he was still amazing. I just don't think that was the all-time great GOAT level player anymore. And that's not a knock on him. He was 35, damn, whatever.
Right.
So it's not a knock on him. The fact that he was still the second best player in the sport at that age is still a testament to him. Just, I think it wasn't as good. But that's it. That's the only knock I can have on MJ, that he might not be number one if I only use the last 3 years of his prime.
I guess someone out there who's like really cares about longevity might knock MJ versus Kobe. I never would.
You'd have to really like longevity.
Hypothetical.
It's like MJ he was in Chicago for 13 years.
Yeah.
2 of them was the 95 season, which he only played 17 games. And the other
he
one
was
was
still the best player in the world when he wasn't playing.
So it's really 11 years. It's really 11 full years he was in Chicago. Yeah. Kobe's prime is like 11 or 12 years. So even like the longevity argument, like, you see what I'm saying? It says,
I know. I mean, I think that it's just MJ, and then everyone else is in the distant rearview mirror.
So that's like the closest I can get to MJ not being one is if I just remove the best years of his career, only use the last 3 prime years, and then maybe he's not number one. That's the only argument I can have against MJ. He's very clearly number one. When we do our GOAT list in 4 weeks, I'm sure he will be quite high on the list. Wherever he stacks up, I don't know. He will be quite high, I think. Is there anything else to be said about Michael Jordan, or are we done?
I mean, yeah, he's the GOAT. I preferred skinny MJ was the best player ever. Lean MJ with the mid-high socks jumping out of the gym. But yeah, I mean, there's absolutely nothing you could ask for out of a shooting guard outside of saying, hey, I want him to be like the greatest shooter ever, distance shooter. He wasn't that, but aside from not being one of the greatest distance shooters who's ever played, everything else on both sides of the ball just absolutely insanely elite fairy tale shit.
he might be able to make my top 5 when we do the actual list. I'm considering him for a top 5 spot. I mean, there's a 7-foot version of him in Minnesota that we'll have to talk about at some point. But yeah, MJ's pretty cool.
He's pretty good.
I like that you're on the same page as me when it comes to that guy. But anyway, that does just about do it. I do have a couple of super chats before we get out of here. And then we will be done and I'll read off the list. But before we do that, Whoopity Scoopity said, I know he plays point guard, but is it wrong to think of SGA as a shooting guard when you rank him all time? I just rank people all time based on the position they're listed at. That's quite it. But if you want to call him a shooting guard because he's not the typical playmaker or whatever, then that's your prerogative. But for me, wherever you're listed out on Basketball Reference, that's the position you're going to be at on these lists. SGA was eligible for the point guard list last week. He ultimately didn't make it. I think he was actually last. I think he was 16th out of 16th. But he was eligible. One person had him. And then Cowboy Bob said, Joe Dumars 3-point shot, top defender versus Jordan, go New York, go. Yep. Joe Dumars did get 1 vote, if I remember correctly. Joe Dumars did have 1 vote. So someone did have him. It was Gifted, I believe, if I remember correctly. It was Gifted who had him in 10th. But anyway, the official 19 people we had named was tied for last place. Sam Jones, Hal Greer, and Joe Dumars. In 16th place, it was Mitch Richmond with 2 points. In 15th, it was Sidney Moncrief with 3 points. In 14th, it was Pete Maravich with 5 points. In 12th, it was Vince Carter and Klay Thompson, both with 7 points. In 11th, it was Manu Ginobili with 27 points. In 10th, it was Tracy McGrady with 39 points. In 9th, it was Reggie Miller with 41 points. In 8th, it was George Gervin with 47 points. In 7th, it was Ray Allen with 53 points. Joint 5th, it was Allen Iverson and Clyde Drexler with 81 points. In 4th, it was James Harden with 113 points. In 3rd, it was Dwyane Wade with 139 points. And our unanimous top 2 with 162 points in 2nd was Kobe Bryant. And first place was Michael Jordan with 180 out of 180 points. That was our top 10. Now, before we get out of here, Tyler, Pirate, where can anyone find you if they want to find you? Who are you? All of that good stuff that usually is an outro.
Yeah, for me, Hoop Venue, all platforms. I do basketball analysis. I do shorts content, mostly long form content, but I've expanded into some shorts content. So any platform, Hoop Venue, all support is very much appreciated.
You can find me. I'll be down at the Tiki Hut in about a half hour, getting some pints. So anyone who's thirsty, join me down there. I got a chess tournament coming up next week. Find me that. That'll be in Hayward.
Nice.
And then just out and about. Keep your eyes open.
There we go. Out and about. John D's links will be in the description. He doesn't have the chance to do his outro because he had to leave us after glazing Kobe. But anyway, next week we will be onto the small forward list. Same principle, maybe some different guests. Top 10 small forwards of all time. These guys will contribute to that list as well. Thank you for you guys for actually contributing for this 6-week bunch of lists that you guys are making. I'm having fun. I hope you guys are enjoying the content. Hope you guys enjoyed being here. We will be back same time. Well, maybe on time next week. I don't know. But around the same time next week. Thank you guys for watching. And we will see you when we see you. And goodbye, Dad. There we go.